Chapter 512. What did you say? Ma Dong couldn't believe it. Jiang Xiu was usually cold and indifferent. It was fine if he didn't greet his senior brother, but now he dared to talk back to him. You're just a new disciple. How dare you be so arrogant? I'll make the arrangements. It's not up to you to say anything. You have to accept it whether you like it or not. Jiang Xiu glanced at him indifferently. Who do you think you are? How dare you mess with me? You're just an inner disciple. What right do you have to give me a shabby house? Today, I'm going to live in the courtyard by the cliff. What can you do about it? As he spoke, Jiang Xiu's ferocious aura burst out. How dare you? Jiang Xiu sneered. He didn't even look at him, and went straight to the courtyard. Although the servants were very nervous, they followed Jiang Xiu closely. However, they all looked anxious. They wanted to persuade Jiang Xiu not to be so aggressive. They didn't want to offend their senior brother, but they didn't dare to say that to Jiang Xiu. Seeing that Jiang Xiu didn't take him seriously, Ma Dong couldn't keep his face straight. Especially in front of the two new junior brothers who had been so respectful to him. His prestige fell to the ground. I think you're courting death. Ma Dong's figure rushed out and floated in the air. The airflow around his body rotated, and his black robe fluttered. The airflow around him crackled. At this moment, Ma Dong was like a sharp sword. Rip. He pointed his sword at Jiang Xiu and a sword light rushed out. The sword light flashed, engulfing the heaven and earth and stirring up the airflow. The powerful sword chi penetrated the void, and was about to kill Jiang Xiu. Immortal slaying sword? Jiang Xiu's lips curled into a smile. His figure swayed slightly, and the cloud under him shot him up into the sky like a sprayer. At the same time, there was a flash of light in front of him and a long saber slashed down from the sky. At the same time he cursed, Humph! The first sound of heaven and earth. This was the first time Jiang Xiu unleashed his first divine rune talent in the immortal martial continent. His opponent's subordinate was a late-stage heavenly immortal, a minor level higher than him. However, from the beginning, Jiang Xiu knew what kind of sword technique he was going to use. He was too familiar with it. His saber light directly cut into the sword light. He knew exactly how the sword light condensed. Under this collision, after a flash of light, the saber light continued to slash forward without slowing down. Ma Dong turned pale with fright. How is that possible? His realm was higher than Jiang Xiu's, and his supernatural power was stronger than Jiang Xiu's. What he used was the sword technique of Tianqing school. How could Jiang Xiu defeat him? It was too late to dodge. He could only chant an incantation, and a thin layer of light appeared within his body. Puchi. Ma Dong's complexion instantly paled as the blade pierced through his body. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He clutched his chest in pain as his eyes stared at Jiang Xiu with indescribable fear. Wow! Everyone who witnessed this scene was in an uproar. The two new disciples were dumbfounded. Jiang Xiu was so powerful that he could even defeat senior brother Ma with one strike? This naturally caused them to be extremely shocked. But what caused them to be even more shocked was that Jiang Xiu actually dared to make a move against their senior brother as soon as he arrived here. Isn't this a little too bold? The onlookers felt their hair stand on end. Jiang Xiu's eyes turned cold as he glanced at Ma Dong coldly. Do you have the guts to stop me again? If Jiang Xiu struck again, he would definitely be killed by the saber. Ma Dong glared at him angrily, but he didn't dare to say anything. His heart was filled with both shock and anger. Needless to say, he was angry but he was also shocked. His realm is obviously lower than mine. Jiang Xiu shouted coldly. If you don't want to die, scram. Okay, you have guts. Ma Dong dragged his injured body and flew in another direction. He was an inner sect disciple, so his position was higher than that of an outer sect disciple. However, he had lost all his face and had to flee in a fluster. He was battered and exhausted. He didn't have the slightest bit of prestige left. Even if he met the other two new disciples in the future, it wouldn't matter. Humph! Jiang Xiu sneered, but in his heart, he was cursing Ma Dong for being an idiot. The reason why Jiang Xiu was a genius was that he never followed blindly to cultivate sword techniques. Before he understood the power of sword techniques, he would never ignore the essence of sword techniques, nor would he ignore the meaning of incantations. Immortal slaying sword, as the name implied, was used to slay immortals. This sword could explode with great power when facing immortal cultivators. The sword techniques were used to target immortals, and the incantations were used to suppress immortals. However, Ma Dong forgot one thing. Jiang Xiu wasn't an immortal, but a god. This was the main reason for Ma Dong's complete defeat. Let's go. Jiang Xiu flew towards the courtyard he had chosen. Ma Dong had been taught a lesson by Jiang Xiu. Although everyone thought that the courtyard by the cliff was the best, no one dared to snatch it from him. The 5 of them, master and servant, lived in the courtyard. Young master is so powerful. Even an immortal on horseback was defeated. The 2 girls were very excited. Li Chang was a little worried. His young master was too strong. On the surface, he had won and was very impressive. However, what would happen next? Ma Dong had been in Tianqing school for so many years. How could he be bullied by a newcomer? It was unwise for a cultivator to fight with a senior over an insignificant residence. Settle it as soon as possible. If there's anything you don't have, you can buy it in Tianqing City. Although the courtyard was there, it had been empty for a long time. Everything was missing, including the simplest quilt. On the other hand, the other 2 had hundreds of servants. A courtyard was not enough to accommodate them. Needless to say, when the time came, many people would be chased down the mountain to live in Tianqing City. There were also carriages of supplies, pots, bowls, ladles, and basins. Shangguan Zhaorong and the 2 girls roughly tidied up the courtyard. Li Chang did not dare to be arrogant anymore. He helped out wherever he could. Young master, we'll be going to Tianqing City. Before tonight, everything had to be properly arranged so that Jiang Xiu could live comfortably. Okay. Jiang Xiu also left the house and flew towards Hidden Sword Pavilion. Everything here was so familiar. He turned a corner in a familiar corridor and came to a room with a bunch of slow bookshelves. Sure enough, this place was still the same as before. There were all kinds of simple notation and a bunch of miscellaneous notes. In his previous life, Jiang Xiu spent a lot of time cultivating here, especially reading sword manuals. He started from the most basic bit by bit. He remembered that at that time, Jiang Xiu was bullied by his senior brother. His medicinal pills and other things were taken away. He secretly hid some in Hidden Sword Pavilion. He did not know if there were any left. He walked to the place where he hid his medicinal pills. Although they were not very popular, they were very useful for Jiang Xiu at his current stage. He pulled open the bookshelf and saw a tightly sealed porcelain bottle. He was delighted. It was still here. This feeling was definitely like suddenly remembering that he had hidden 300 yuan. He reached out and took it out. However, when he opened the bottle and poured out the contents, Jiang Xiu's joy disappeared. It was empty. Not a single pill. Back then, Jiang Xiu did not have a special physique. In the early stage, coupled with some limitations in his knowledge, his progress was very hurried. He was looked down upon by his senior brother and was bullied. In order to survive, he went into the mountains to collect medicinal herbs, hunt demons, and refine medicinal pills. It was very difficult. It was also during that period of time that Jiang Xiu grew the fastest. He did not care. He would do it again. However, he did not leave immediately. He flipped through the simple notation here with great interest. These basic things did not seem very interesting, but he could slowly recall them. Although the amount of resources in Tianqing school was much more than in Jialan dynasty, it was far from enough for Jiang Xiu's cultivation. It seems that if I want to get more resources and increase my cultivation speed, I can only go to a higher mountain. He thought of a place where he hid his treasures. He could think of a way to enter that place. On the other side, the news that Jiang Xiu had beaten up a senior brother as soon as he arrived spread like the wind in Tianqing school. For a time, it caused quite a stir. The Tianqing school had been passed down for a long time, but no one had dared to be so arrogant. He had dared to hurt people as soon as he came up the mountain. Many people were eager to meet this new junior brother. Tianqing school was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. If one wanted to enter the inner sect from the outer sect, one had to step on others. It was the same for becoming a true disciple from the inner sect. One had to kill his way out of a bloody storm. Only by becoming a true disciple and having the protection of a master could one be considered to have a backer. However, the only thing one could rely on in this world was one's own cultivation. Chapter 5:13. After leaving the Hidden Sword Pavilion, Jiang Xiu went to the Sword Cry Peak, a place where many disciples practiced their swordsmanship. An ancestor of the Tianqing school had left many traces of his swordsmanship there, and many disciples were willing to linger there. It was said that if one's comprehension was high enough, one could comprehend one or two of the swordsmanship. The power of the swordsmanship was even greater than that of ordinary true disciples. Therefore, many disciples harbored dreams and came here to try their luck. It was very popular, and over time, it became one of the busiest places in the Tianqing school. However, before Jiang Xiu reached there, he was stopped along the way. Jiang Xiu looked up and saw the injured Ma Dong. Beside him were several disciples wearing the Tianqing school uniform. Jiang Xiu swept his eyes over them, but he couldn't see through any of their realms. They were all above him. Your junior brother Jiang. The leader was a young man who looked handsome and had some bearing. However, this former sect master didn't even recognize a few true disciples, let alone these ordinary disciples. Yes, Jiang Xiu had encountered this scene when he was studying on Earth. In his previous life, when he first entered the Tianqing school, he also encountered this scene. When young people gathered together, this kind of thing seemed to happen all the time. Last time, Jiang Xiu was scared to death, but now, you've got guts. You dare to fight with senior brother as soon as you arrive. Jiang Xiu said. So what if I am? Are you blind? You don't even recognize our senior brother Wu Qin. This is the son of the Daoyuo Peak's deputy peak master. He was born a disciple of the Tianqing school. Jiang Xiu laughed in his heart. The second generation of the Quan family. And then? Xiao Wuchen laughed. Jiang Xiu's indifference really made him feel very uncomfortable. Which new disciple didn't bow their heads and flatter him when they saw him? Since you're so arrogant, then you'll have to hand in the resources every month on time. His smile gradually disappeared, and his eyes shone with a terrifying light. Suddenly, killing intent surged out. A new disciple like Jiang Xiu dared to be so presumptuous. This completely infuriated him. According to him, they needed to be taught a lesson. In the Tianqing school area, especially for those who had just entered the school and whose cultivation was relatively low, when they saw this local tyrant, everyone had the attitude that they could not afford to provoke or hide from him. Whenever they saw him, they would hide far away. What if I don't? Xiao Wuchen's face became even colder, and he smiled evilly. At this moment, he almost couldn't hold back his anger. He wanted to directly injure this kid, and make him understand what kind of place the Tianqing school was. Then I'll break all the bones in your body one by one. If you don't give it to me, then I'll cut off your fingers one by one, Jiang Xiu said. Are you sure you can do it? Why don't you try it now? What? Xiao Wuchen froze for a moment. Jiang Xiu really didn't fear him at all. He had never seen such a new disciple before. But in terms of strength, he was only in the middle stage of the lower divine realm. Could it be that he had some background? Xiao Wuchen was very clear about Jiang Xiu's background. He was a disciple recruited by Elder Lu from the Jialan dynasty. I think you're courting death. You think I don't dare to kill you? Jiang Xiu's eyes were still indifferent. He looked at Xiao Wuchen like a bodhisattva in a temple looking at an ant under his feet. You can try. You're courting death. Xiao Wuchen hadn't exploded yet, but a few of his subordinates couldn't stand it anymore. They were provoked again and again by a new disciple. Where should they put their faces? They hadn't bullied anyone for so long that they didn't even know how to be afraid of new disciples. They were really regressing the more they mingled. But at this moment, a loud noise came from afar. It seemed like something had happened. It seemed like it came from the Sword Cry Mountain. They heard a pleasant voice. Senior Brother Gu, you drank too much. A few people pulled a man in luxurious clothes. I didn't drink too much. Quickly, call my junior sister Qing over to drink with me. Senior brother, you really drank too much. We brothers will send you back to rest. That man in luxurious clothes waved his hand and said, What rest? If I want to rest, I want junior sister Qing to rest with me. And Jiang Xiu saw that this man in luxurious clothes had some eyes. He had seen him before. If he didn't guess wrong, he should be a true disciple. Why was he drunk and acting crazy here? From his tone, he was even flirting with his junior sister. Junior sister Qing Qing, are you comprehending the sword above? Let's go back first. Not far away, he saw a beautiful female disciple with a cold expression. Jiang Xiu remembered this female disciple. As the former patriarch, of course he had to care about her. This girl was born with the clear sky true body. Her immortal body was incomparably pure. As soon as she entered the sect, a few old fellows of the sect fought to take her as a disciple. In the end, she even went to Jiang Xiu and was scolded by him. Later on, Jiang Xiu let her make her own decision. Who did she follow? Jiang Xiu actually abandoned Xiao Wuchen and walked over. Looking at the man in luxurious clothes, senior brother Gu, he muttered in his heart, "Consider yourself unlucky." Hey, do you still want people to comprehend the sword? Xiao Wuchen and the others couldn't help but stare. The trouble on their side hadn't been solved yet, and they actually dared to provoke those true disciples. Were they tired of living? Senior brother Gu's junior brothers saw Jiang Xiu coming over. Although they were also a little drunk, the fierceness on their faces didn't lessen. Who are you? What business do you have, Yule? This is the son of elder Gu Duqian. So he was the son of that old fellow Gu Duqian. No wonder he dared to drink and openly tease the genius female disciple of the sect. Hurry up and push him away. Don't look for trouble. Unfortunately, they didn't know that Jiang Xiu had come to look for trouble. So without waiting for him to speak, Jiang Xiu walked over and stopped in front of senior brother Gu. Senior brother Gu, this is the Sword Cry Peak. It's the holy land of the Sword Tao. It's not very good for you to drink and cause trouble here, right? Xiao Wuchen and Ma Dong were completely convinced. This young man really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He was the second generation of a true disciple, and his father was an elder. He was really tired of living. Who do you think you are? This senior brother Gu had been bitterly in love with junior sister Qing for many years, but he was rejected time and time again. This time he was rejected in public and was embarrassed. After drinking, he came to look for her again. That kind of pain of not being able to get what he wanted, anyone who had liked a girl before could understand. It was heartbreaking. You better watch carefully. I'm the son of Elder Gu. I can do whatever I want in Tianqing School. Can't I do whatever I want in this small Sword Cry Peak? I just want to treat junior sister Qing to a drink. If you have nothing to do with this, hurry up and leave. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Jiang Xiu said. I don't care who you are. Sword Cry Peak is a holy land. If you dare to make a scene here under the guise of drinking, don't blame me for kicking you down the mountain. I'll go. Xiao Wuchen felt that he couldn't take it anymore. Had he been eliminated by this world? A newcomer actually wanted to kick an elder's son down the mountain. Senior brother Gu was amused. He was considered one of the best hedonistic sons in Tianqing School. After doing whatever he wanted for most of his life, he actually met someone who was even more arrogant than him. You want to kick me down the mountain? Why don't you try? As he spoke, his eyes emitted a fierce light. He raised his hand and slapped Jiang Xiu. Who told you to be ruthless with me? Originally, this kind of matter should have been left to his underlings. However, he was in a bad mood today. In addition, the goddess of his dreams was in front of him. He felt that he had to show off his prestige and let junior sister Qing know how awesome the man who pursued her was. However, senior brother Gu saw a strange smile in the other party's eyes. Wait, a smile? What was this situation? He was the one who slapped him, yet he was still smiling. Senior brother Gu felt that there was something wrong with this person's brain. However, before he could figure it out, a foot kicked him in the face. He saw that the foot kept getting bigger and bigger. Then he felt a pain on his face and his whole body flew out. By the time he reacted, he had already flown off the mountain. Damn, he was actually kicked down the mountain. Everyone heard it. He told me to try. Clang! Xiao Wuchen and Ma Dong almost fell to the ground and died. The entire Sword Cry Peak was silent. Junior sister Qing was so shocked that she covered her mouth and almost cried out. Everyone looked at Jiang Xiu in shock, including senior brother Gu who had fallen off the mountain. He still couldn't believe that all of this was real. Chapter 514. Xiao Wuchen and Ma Dong were completely dumbfounded. They looked at each other in dismay. What kind of background did this guy have? He was so awesome that he even dared to kick the son of an elder. What was a mere son of a deputy peak master to him? Fortunately, they didn't fight with him just now. It seemed that his background wasn't ordinary. Phew! Thinking of this, Xiao Wuchen felt a chill down his spine. He was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. He secretly exchanged glances with a few people beside him, ready to fight at any time. I can't afford to offend him, but I can still hide from him. But how could the junior brothers besides senior brother Gu let him fall off the cliff? According to the strength of a cultivator's body, if he fell from such a high height, he wouldn't die, but he wouldn't be able to escape with a broken arm. Cloud-sucking hand. Suddenly, he pushed out his palm, and a powerful force covered the valley under the mountain where the wind was howling. He pulled up with force, and even senior brother Gu was pulled up along with the airflow below. You dare to kick me? This kick made senior brother Gu completely furious. He stared at Jiang Xiao. Do you know who I am? My father is an elder, Gu Diqian. If you dare to kick me today, I'll make sure you can't stay in Tianqing school anymore. Jiang Xiao said indifferently with dead fish eyes. I'm very scared. As he spoke, Jiang Xiao walked forward step by step. Senior brother Gu was a bit confused as he watched him approach. It was mainly because he drank a little too much. His big brain was dizzy, and he couldn't think clearly. However, he had a very bad feeling in his heart. You, what do you want to do? Jiang Xiao smiled. Kick you off the mountain. Ah. Senior brother Gu saw the foot in front of him grow bigger and bigger again. Then he felt pain on his face. With a scream, his whole body flew out again. You said that I would kick you off the mountain. As a disciple of Tianqing school, I have to do what I said. Let's keep our promises. Damn it. The seniors and juniors on the side were stunned. Our senior brother Gu almost died from anger. Where did this lunatic come from? Did he not know what the elder's son meant? If you dare to touch me, not to mention my father, even I can chop you into pieces. Moreover, aren't you afraid of being punished by the law enforcement hall for openly kicking a successor disciple down the mountain? However, a dignified true disciple had been kicked down the mountain by an ordinary disciple who had appeared out of nowhere. Where would he put his face? If this news spread back to the upper three peaks, he would become a laughingstock. It was likely that he would never be able to raise his head again. No, if I have the chance to go up again, I must convince him not to kick me down the mountain. It's too embarrassing. Cloud-sucking palm. Seeing that senior martial brother Gu was kicked down again, he hurriedly used his immortal martial technique to suck senior martial brother Gu back from the cliff. Wait a minute. Brother, let's discuss this properly. We are all civilized people. Why do you? Senior brother Gu wanted to say that there was no need to fight, but before he could finish his sentence, he saw the foot grow bigger again. Damn, this is unreasonable. He couldn't allow himself to be kicked again. The first time was carelessness, the second time was carelessness, but if he were to be kicked a third time, he would be a fool. I'll dodge. Seeing that foot coming, senior martial brother Gu dodged backwards. Although he had drunk a lot, the immortal martial technique had almost become a part of his body. However, why didn't his foot touch the ground? He lowered his head to look. Damn. Senior martial brother Gu. Senior martial brother Gu. Senior martial brother Gu jumped down by himself. Everyone was dumbstruck. They were extremely shocked. What was going on? The person who had been trying to save senior martial brother Gu was also stupefied. He jumped down by himself. Should I save him or not? Hiss. Xiao Wuchen Ma Dong, and the others were so scared that they sucked in a breath of cold air. The dignified elder Gu's stomach was actually forced to jump off the cliff by himself? Run quickly. Xiao Wuchen made a prompt decision to run. If senior martial brother Gu regained his senses, he might be the next senior martial brother Gu. He had to run as fast and as far as he could. Brat, you tricked me? I am also a victim. There were many people on the Jiaming Peak, and they were all confused. They secretly asked around to find out who the person who dared to beat up senior martial brother Gu was. The one who was bullied was Senior Marshal Brother Gu, and his father was Elder Gu. If they went to the law enforcement hall and said a few words, they would be in big trouble. That junior sister Qing glanced at Jiang Xiu strangely. Back then, she had only met Jiang Xiu in a hurry. She didn't even dare to raise her head when the sovereign was present. It was only when Jiang Xiu raised his head that junior sister Qing was able to see her beautiful countenance. Her eyes were filled with panic, and she didn't know where to look at the sovereign. Therefore, Jiang Xiu was sure that she wouldn't be able to recognize him. I heard that he is new here. What new here? Everyone felt that it was inconceivable. A newcomer actually dared to go against Senior Marshal Brother Gu, and even made Senior Marshal Brother Gu jump off the cliff by himself. Junior Marshal Sister Qing's expression changed. She thought that Jiang Xiu had some powerful backing. What was going on? Seems like he won't be able to escape the law enforcement hall's punishment. He probably has to go to the law enforcement peak. The storm of Jiang Xiu beating Ma Dong had not yet subsided, and there was a new wave. And this time, the one who bullied was the son of an elder. The whole lower three peaks was in an uproar. That afternoon, Shangguan Jiarong, the other maids, and Li Chang brought the things back to the sect. They cleaned the courtyard in an orderly manner to welcome the new life of Tianqing School. Then the people from the law enforcement hall came. You are Junior Marshal Brother Jiang? Jiang Xiu didn't know the people from the law enforcement hall, who were in charge of the lower three peaks. He only knew a few important people in the law enforcement hall. How could he know such a small character? Yes. You caused trouble at Jiaming Peak, kicked Gu Qian off the peak, and caused serious injuries. Pack up and follow us. Everyone in Tianqing School respected and feared the people from the law enforcement hall. The word go was simply a judgment. Anyone who heard it would be scared to the ground. But today, when they said the word go, they didn't expect that Jiang Xiu was even more anxious than them. No need to pack up. Let's go quickly. Damn, what was going on? Where is the law enforcement hall going to lock me up? Looking at Jiang Xiu's expectant face, the people from the law enforcement hall felt that they had come to the wrong world. Had the law enforcement hall become a tourist attraction now? Was it so popular? After decades of law enforcement, they had never seen a criminal disciple so eager to go out like a child. They couldn't help but remind him. The elders have approved to go to the Raging Flames cave to serve your sentence. Really? Jiang Xiu was so happy that he almost jumped up. He still couldn't think of a way to go to the Raging Flames cave. He said excitedly, "Thank you so much." He just wanted to reach out and hold the other party's hand and thank him properly. The other party was stunned again, and started doubting life again. Junior Marshal Brother, we are going to serve our sentence. Do you know about the Raging Flames cave? The flames there burn for a long time. The pain can be imagined. You have to stay there for a long time. Even some seniors with high cultivation are only half alive when they come out. You, with your realm, you may not be able to come out alive. Why don't you tell the servants something? Tell them if there is anything you haven't told them? Jiang Xiu said. No need, no need. Oh right. How long will the sentence be? The other party said, 1 month. Jiang Xiu frowned slightly and muttered, 1 month is a bit short. What? It's too short? The people from the law enforcement hall started doubting life again. This new junior marshal brother, as your senior marshal brother, I feel that it is necessary to remind you that you are going to be punished. Jiang Xiu said, That's right. This senior marshal brother, can you help me extend it to 3 months? The other party felt as if something was stuck in his chest. The corner of his mouth twitched unnaturally and he fiercely refused. No. How dare you look down on the law enforcement hall? I will not agree. Jiang Xiu took out a pill bottle and stuffed it into the other party's hand. This is a small token of appreciation. Senior marshal brother, don't dislike it. Make an exception. If you can't do 3 months, then help me get 2.5 months. Looking at the pill bottle in his hand, he didn't need to guess to know what was inside. Looking at the pill bottle that everyone cared for, he felt that something in his heart was broken. He grabbed the small porcelain bottle and fiercely threw it to the ground. He angrily said, Who do you think I am? What kind of place do you think my law enforcement hall is? That you can come and go as you wish and stay as long as you want. Take him away. Li Chang and Sheng Guanzhao on the side were so nervous that their faces turned pale. They had just arrived and their buttocks hadn't even warmed up yet, but the young master was already taken away to be punished. Chapter 5:15. 300 miles north of Tianqing School, there was a fire heavenly vein. It was said that it was caused by a meteorite. The whole mountain was out of tune with the surrounding mountains. The temperature was extremely high, and all the immortals were of the fire attribute. Even the ground was ablaze. It was one of the 3 places of torture in Tianqing School. It was specially used to punish disciples who violated the rules of the sect. Jiang Xiu's situation was not serious. He didn't even need to be interrogated. He didn't have any objections, so he directly brought the senior brother of the law enforcement hall here. It was really shockingly hot inside. Some of the cracks in the ground would burst into flames from time to time. At a glance, it looked like a barbecue. Even the air seemed to be distorted. People could hear crackling sounds inside, like fire burning dry wood. Junior brother Jiang, this place is good, right? You like it? This was obviously sarcastic remarks. Every disciple who was sent here was crying and begging for mercy to go back. To be honest, such a place was really not suitable for people to stay. But Jiang Xiu's words almost made him collapse. Are you sure you can't stay for 2 more months? What do you think the law enforcement hall is? Blue veins appeared on the forehead of the senior brother of the law enforcement hall, which could explode at any time. The outer core competition is about to begin. Do you want to miss it? Competition? Jiang Xiu had almost forgotten about this. If an outer core disciple wanted to enter the inner core, and if an inner core disciple wanted to become a successor disciple, they had to fight their way out. This was an opportunity for disciples. It was like a major exam. If you did well, you would be promoted. If you didn't, you would have to repeat the year. In fact, Jiang Xiu was also very conflicted. On the one hand, he wanted to find out why his position as the head of the sect was replaced before the 60-year period was up. Then he had to keep moving up. Only those who came in contact with the people above him could know the truth. On the other hand, the higher he went, the more acquaintances he would meet, and the easier it would be to expose his identity. The consequences of exposing his identity were self-evident. This was actually a paradox. However, Jiang Xiu was a person who was very willing to take risks and fight hard. Therefore, from the moment he entered Tianqing School, he decided that he would climb up. Not only did he want to climb up, but he also wanted to be faster, fiercer, and more ruthless than the last time. He wanted Jiang Luoxia to shock Tianqing School and the Immortal Martial Arts Academy once again. He wanted to take back everything he had lost. When the other party said, more than a month later, Jiang Xiu had just entered the sect, so he had no chance of competing in the inner disciple battle in a month's time. However, Jiang Xiu was different. Although he had just entered the sect, he did have a little bit of fame now. For the sake of a place to stay, he had beaten up his senior who was a small realm higher than him. He had even kicked an elder's son down the mountain. Who would dare say that he was not competitive? That was because he couldn't stay in there for too long. If he missed the competition this time, he would have to wait for another 5 years. 5 years was really too long. In the long river of 3,000 years, it was nothing at all. However, he had just returned from Earth. Life was short, so he had to seize every minute. During the outer disciple battle, will the sect leader come back? The other party laughed. Stop dreaming. The outer disciple station elder might not even come. Only when you enter the inner disciple station will you be able to attract the elders or peak leaders. Jiang Xiu of course understood. He was just using this as an excuse. What a pity. Then I won't be able to see the sect leader. Kid, you're quite ambitious. Jiang Xiu asked. Does the sect leader accept disciples? The other party laughed. Stop dreaming. The sect leader basically doesn't accept disciples. The current disciples were all accepted before the sect leader became an elder. Since he became the sect leader, he hasn't accepted a single disciple. I don't think he will accept any more in the future. Before becoming an elder? When was that? The other party said, about 50 years ago. Jiang Xiu asked, the previous sect leader, Jiang Luoxia, was known as the #1 genius of the immortal martial sect in the last 1,000 years. Why did he suddenly change? The other party frowned as if thinking about something. He suddenly reacted and said, "You're just a small disciple. Why do you care so much? You dare to discuss matters of the sect. Do you really not want to live anymore?" Jiang Xiu said, "I'm just curious. I'm just asking. Do you know why the sect leader changed?" The disciple said, "Of course it's because sect leader Jiang has fallen. I heard he was killed." "Bullshit." Jiang Xiu almost blurted out. He suppressed his anger and said, "Who killed him?" The disciple shook his head and said, "I don't know. It hasn't been made public yet." Jiang Xiu sneered in his heart. "I'm standing right in front of you, alive and kicking." But Jiang Xiu could only swallow these words in his stomach. Greetings, Senior Brotherly. The disciples guarding the blazing flame cave saw that the disciplinary hall had escorted a disciple over. They were all preparatory disciples of the disciplinary hall. Although it was tough now, once they got out, their days would be much better than the normal disciples. This is the new junior brother Jiang Xiu. Because he beat up a fellow disciple, he kicked Gu Qian, who is Elder Gu's son, down the mountain. He was sentenced to 1 month of supervision by the disciplinary hall. Oh, don't worry, senior brother. Leave it to us. That person finished speaking and turned to leave. In this damned place, staying even a moment longer was unbearable. Once that person left, the disciples guarding the cave revealed their true nature. I don't need to repeat what this place is. This is just an ordinary prison. First of all, you cannot escape. I don't need to explain what kind of crime you will be charged with. Also, during this period of time, there will be no food. Do you understand? Oh, Jiang Xiu said. Can I go in now? And that person stared blankly, looking at Jiang Xiu strangely. He had never seen a criminal disciple rush into a cave. Was that a place for humans to stay? What a weirdo. I haven't finished yet. What are you in such a hurry for? Once you're inside, you have to hand over 5 kilograms of blazing flame every day. After Jiang Xiu entered, he couldn't help but frown. The temperature was high, and the flames burned continuously. The divine power in his body burst forth in an emergency to resist the harsh environment. Most people who came here to be punished would stay in the outermost area, but he would go in deeper. Here he had hidden a handful of heavenly fire. At the time, when he had obtained this heavenly fire, his heavenly fire Tao had almost reached its end. Therefore, it was useless and he couldn't waste it. He had originally wanted to give it to a disciple, so he temporarily kept it here. However, as time passed, he had forgotten about it. He didn't expect it to come in handy now. His heavenly fire was a second-level heavenly fire. With this high-level heavenly fire, his heavenly fire Tao should be able to take a big step forward. Although he might not be able to fully comprehend the heavenly fire Tao, he was confident that he would be able to enter the late stage of lower sky god. However, this time would be a little long. According to Jiang Xiu's previous cultivation, it would be 2 or 3 times longer than before. In the past, it would take more than a year, but now it would take more than 3 months. Therefore, he would need to spend 3 months with that disciple of the Hall of Justice. However, if he wanted to rush before the intersect battles, then he would need to leave within the stipulated time. Therefore, he would need to increase his speed. It's still here. Jiang Xiu went to the depths and used a shovel to pry open the ore on the ground. He saw a burning flame below. There were many types of heavenly fire: ethereal fire, true fire, karmic fire. Based on his experience, this flame was most likely the karmic fire of the heavenly fire. Because its color was very clear, if it was like true fire, there would be more colors. In terms of power, he could feel a threat from it in his previous life. Although there were many types of karmic fire, as long as it used the heavenly fire Tao, it would be enough for Jiang Xiu. Moreover, heavenly fire was too complicated. It was a great Tao. Heavenly fire was very powerful, and its battle prowess when it reached the great perfection was publicly acknowledged. Immediately, he sat down cross-legged and began to absorb and refine the flame. According to his original estimation, it would take more than 3 months. In order to increase his speed, Jiang Xiu once again took out the soul suppression pill. Previously, Jiang Xiu had prepared 2 pills for 3 months. Later, he used up half a month's worth, so he still had 2.5 months' worth of pills left. In his previous life, Jiang Xiu had met a strange Protoss in the Divine Prefecture. That race could clone themselves, which was the so-called outer body incarnation of immortal cultivators. Of course, Jiang Xiu could not do it, but he had obtained an important technique. After simplifying it again and again, Jiang Xiu could basically use 2 techniques in one body. Although it was only 2 techniques, it was already very heaven-defying. This was not just a case of multitasking, but a case of multitasking. He could now use this secret technique. Chapter 5:16. This was an extremely wonderful secret technique. In order to obtain this secret technique, Jiang Xiu, as the leader of the Tianqing school, had paid a huge price. However, this secret technique was the gift of the Protoss after all. Immortal cultivators had great limitations. It was impossible to use 2 spells in the same body at the same time. However, one had to comprehend the laws of nature, and the other had to strengthen the soul. To comprehend the laws of nature while strengthening the soul stone, one's body and soul were affected by great pain, and even hallucinations. This was impossible without separation. As soon as the secret technique was used, Jiang Xiu's whole body was in a state of vibration. In fact, the whole world was vibrating, and so were people. The source of vibration was the heart, which was vibrating at about 70 beats per second. Now, Jiang Xiu's vibration was definitely at a much higher frequency. A person's heart rate exceeded 140 beats, and they were almost dead. At this moment, Jiang Xiu's body was vibrating at least 200 beats per second, and it was still increasing. The Raging Flame Cave was indeed one of the 3 major prisons of the Tianqing school. The flames were fierce and the temperature was extremely high. In such an environment, ordinary air was almost non-existent. Even the spiritual energy was hot, and even breathing became difficult. His divine body had to instinctively resist the heat. What a hellish place! The cave guard outside shook his body. Although the high-frequency vibration caused all the magnetic fields in the surroundings to change, the range of the vibration was a little beyond the normal human perception. The cave guard didn't feel it, but his body felt uncomfortable. Many people would encounter bottlenecks in the process of cultivation. This was caused by the individual's body. After causing this reason, the most obvious manifestation was the stagnation of the spiritual power in the body. Jiang Xiu didn't have a special physique when he was tested in the Tianqing school. The so-called special physique was summed up according to the cultivation experience of predecessors. At what level would one's spiritual power stagnation occur? Some people might encounter it when they were Earth Immortals, some in Sky Immortals, and some in Middle Sky Immortals. As for Jiang Xiu, ever since he started cultivating until he became an immortal king, he hadn't appeared even once. Even now, he still didn't know where his limits were. Originally, it should be said that his physique should be very outstanding, but it just so happened that his physique was very ordinary. The heavenly fire laws contained within the karmic fire exceeded Jiang Xiu's expectations. The content contained within shocked him greatly. Although it could allow him to further perfect the heavenly fire laws that he had finally comprehended, the large amount of content that needed to be comprehended slowed him down. This gave him a sense of urgency. On the other hand, after using the soul-binding pellet, the speed at which his soul increased was much faster than when he used the Sex Divine Soul pellet in his previous life. It was estimated that the strength of his soul would reach the strength of a late lower heavenly deity after 7 days. 7 days later, his soul's strength had reached the required level, but his comprehension of the heavenly fire laws had slowed down, and the growth of his godhead had slowed down as well. His soul's strength was still a little lacking. Due to the restriction of his realm, he couldn't increase his soul's strength. He could only cultivate the heavenly fire laws. Therefore, he restrained the secret technique of using 2 people at once, and focused on comprehending the heavenly fire laws. Jiang Xiu was very eager to have a law that could cultivate his soul's strength. He had mastered a few soul-type spells, and their power was limited. Moreover, this was already the secret technique of the Tianqing school's sect master. He couldn't use it. Once he used it, he would lose his path. In addition, some geniuses could create soul-type spells. However, Jiang Xiu's talent in creation seemed to be limited. In his previous life, he had spent a lot of effort, but he hadn't made much progress. According to legend, soul-type cultivation techniques could break through the restrictions of one's realm. They could cultivate one's soul to become very powerful at a very low realm. However, soul-type cultivation techniques were very rare. In the entire immortal martial arts world, they only existed in legends. Otherwise, Jiang Xiu would have gotten his hands on them no matter what and no matter the price. It would be great if I had a soul-type cultivation technique. Even without this kind of cultivation technique, Jiang Xiu still had a great advantage compared to the other Tianqing school disciples. He didn't have to worry about formations, talismans, spells, secret techniques, and so on. He already knew all of these. Knowledge couldn't be taken away by the fate technique. He could focus all his energy on breaking through his realm. This gave him a lot of time to cultivate. Boy, someone was shouting outside. According to the rules, Jiang Xiu had to hand in 5 kilograms of fire every day. Jiang Xiu had stayed in the cave for 10 days, so he had to hand in 50 kilograms of fire. Originally, he had to hand in 50 kilograms of fire every day. However, when they came several times, Jiang Xiu didn't answer them. They also didn't see him at the entrance of the cave. Because the flames in the cave were too unbearable, they didn't come in. However, it had been 10 days in a row. They were a little worried that Jiang Xiu might have escaped. They could only brace themselves and come in. Junior brother Jiang. A voice came from afar. It was very anxious. If Jiang Xiu escaped, it would be a big crime. However, they would also be guilty of negligence. The flames were too strong. They couldn't follow him to the depths. He can't have really escaped, right? It can't be. The 2 cave guards looked sad. How could they be so unlucky? However, they had been at the entrance of the cave and hadn't left. How could they not notice that someone had escaped? How did he escape? Jiang Xiu vaguely heard the voice. He knew that the cave guards outside were probably worried that he would escape, and specially came in to check. For an immortal cultivator, passing through walls was a simple escape technique. However, in this kind of place, ordinary people couldn't escape by using ordinary escape techniques. In the eyes of immortal cultivators, the relationship between humans and space was completely different from the relationship between mortals and space. Before becoming a celestial king, Jiang Xiu also didn't understand the relationship between his existence and space. It had even reached the extent of comprehending the laws of the world. This was because he still didn't understand what kind of existence he was. Therefore, there was no way for him to form a connection. In the past, Jiang Xiu's escape techniques only floated on the surface. It wasn't until he became a celestial king that he understood that space wasn't a straight line. It was just that he couldn't find the path of another dimension. However, escape techniques could. This was the essence of escape techniques. After becoming a celestial king, Jiang Xiu discovered that there was an extremely small but incomparably huge existence in this world. It was so huge that it was simply unimaginable. And this kind of energy was discovered by the smart humans on Earth before countless heavenly gods. Moreover, they even created an extremely terrifying and powerful weapon, the atomic bomb. And celestial kings could discover even more energy that existed in the void, which was even smaller and more powerful. And as a celestial god, Jiang Xiu also tried his best to discover the existence of this kind of energy. It was just like how humans couldn't hear sounds that exceeded their own hertz. They couldn't discover it at all. He could only wait for the day he became a celestial king. And to escape from a place like this, one had to be a great celestial immortal of Heavenly Fire Avenue. Or at least a celestial king. Thinking of this, Jiang Xiu's comprehension of the heavenly fire laws suddenly sped up. Many of the laws that he didn't understand connected together. Without warning, he entered a state of epiphany. This kind of opportunity was harder to come by. Of course, Jiang Xiu wouldn't stop just because these 2 had entered the cave to find him. Oh no, there really isn't. Should we report it to the Hall of Justice? If they reported it, they'd be punished. If they didn't report it, they'd be punished even more. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. What should we do? There's no other way. We can't let a disciple who made a mistake escape because we're afraid of taking responsibility. In the end, they decided to wait. At the very least, they'd wait until the end of their sentence. But what they didn't expect was that 10 days later, the entire cave began to shake like never before. It rumbled like a volcano was about to erupt. What's going on? This hadn't happened in thousands of years. It seems to be coming from inside the cave. They looked inside and saw that the flames in the cave were much fiercer than before. It was as if someone had added firewood to the fire, causing it to burn even more fiercely. The flames almost covered the entire cave, and they felt that the power of the fire had increased by a large margin. It can't be a fire demon spirit, can it? Boom. A violent shockwave rushed out from inside. From the cave entrance, they felt an irresistible gust of wind and fire blow at them. It sent them flying. Amidst the flames stood a dark shadow. Chapter 5:17. Yu. Seeing the shadow slowly walk out of the cave, the two guards widened their eyes, their hearts filled with shock. The only person who could be in the cave could only be him, but this movement, this aura, he was no longer a mid-stage lower heavenly deity. Advanced? There was only one explanation for this. Impossible. Their voices were filled with disbelief. Surviving in that kind of environment was already very difficult, but he still had the energy to cultivate, and finally broke through? Jiang Xiu walked out of the flames. His entire body seemed to be covered in flames, as if the flames had become a part of his body. The wind and fire were formless, but the spirit had form. His eyes were incomparably proud and cold. He opened his mouth and said, "Exactly 1 month, not 1 day more, not 1 day less. Can I go now?" The two guards crawled up from the ground and said, "You were in there. You scared us. It was a false alarm, a false alarm. All right, the date is here. You can go after signing here." When Jiang Xiu signed his name, one of them suddenly remembered and said, "Oh right, you have to dig 300 pounds of ore a month. Where is the ore you dug?" Bang! Jiang Xiu flung his hand, and a full 300 pounds of ore fell to the ground. Not long after, Jiang Xiu appeared in his own courtyard. When he first arrived, Jiang Xiu had been locked up for an entire month without even staying for a night. During this month, the servants had gone to all the places they could go, and had adapted well, and the house was also tidy and orderly. "Young master, you're finally back." Shangguan Zhaorong and the other servants saw that Jiang Xiu had returned, and were extremely happy. Shangguan Zhaorong knew that he must have been tortured without food, so she welcomed him into the house, brewed some spirit tea, and went to prepare something to eat. Jiang Ge. Hearing that Jiang Xiu had returned, Wu Zhankui, who had been in the sect for a month, came to visit. Yes. He knew that Jiang Xiu treated people coldly, but he didn't mind. Seeing Jiang Xiu casually point at him, he sat down across from him and said, "Jiang Ge, you must have suffered a lot in there. Sai, we've just arrived, so we should keep a low profile and behave ourselves." Jiang Xiu took a sip of tea and felt refreshed. He had been burned in the fire for a whole month and felt like he was about to turn into a mummy. "You came here just to tell me this?" Wu Zhankui said. "That's not it. Jiang Ge probably doesn't know yet. The inner disciple assessment has begun, and it's very lively right now. I don't know if Jiang Ge will participate." At this time, Shangguan Zhaorong brought the food over. Seeing Wu Zhankui's unnatural expression, she frowned. Jiang Xiu didn't care about the guests and started eating. He should. "I plan to participate as well. Of course, it doesn't matter if I pass or not. We've just entered the sect, so the main thing is to accumulate experience. Sometimes experience is more important than strength." Wu Zhankui said, "When the time comes, we'll go together." The two of them were considered to be of the same level, so they should have a close relationship. However, Jiang Xiu's personality was cold and not easy to get along with. Moreover, this trial lasted for a month. "Yes," Wu Zhankui said. "I also heard some things. I heard that many seniors, in order to pass the inner disciple assessment, took the liquid golden pill. This kind of pill can greatly increase one's strength, even doubling or tripling it. Unfortunately, the side effects are too great. It will cause one's spiritual power to stagnate, and there is no possibility of it increasing within a year. Jiang Xiu glanced at him and heard him say, Jiang Gu, are you interested? Jiang Xiu said, I don't need it. This kind of pill can cause more than stagnation of spiritual power. It can basically destroy a person's immortal bones and cause their golden core to be covered in dust forever. From then on, their golden core will become deformed. However, there are many short-sighted disciples among the ordinary disciples. Many people take pills for temporary benefits. Wu Zhangkui said, the rewards for passing the inner disciple assessment are very tempting. Even if you don't pass, the rewards for being at the top of the list are also very good. Jiang Xiu didn't continue. The two of them didn't have anything to talk about. Shengguan Zhaorong once again served Jiang Xiu food. The sword cultivator noticed that Wu Zhangkui was looking at Shengguan Zhaorong with a strange gaze. Wu Zhangkui said softly, Jiang Gu, I have a request. Speak. Wu Zhangkui blinked. I really like your servant girl. Jiang Gu, can you part with her and give her to me? As for the conditions, how about 10 life pills? 10 life pills were a month's worth of resources for an outer disciple of Tianqing school. Perhaps in his eyes, a servant girl, an ordinary servant girl, was not worth much. If placed in an ordinary dynasty, she could be bought with a few hundred taels of silver or gold. He thought that taking out 10 life pills was very sincere. At this time, Shengguan Zhaorong came to deliver food again. Now, she brought up every dish that was cooked in the kitchen. Even so, it wasn't enough for Jiang Xiu. Zhaorong, this heavenly immortal Wu has taken a liking to you and wants you to go over. Shengguan Zhaorong's delicate body trembled as she looked at Jiang Xiu in astonishment. Are you willing? Wu Zhangkui looked at Shengguan Zhaorong expectantly, hoping that she would agree. The normal answer was to listen to the young master's arrangements. However, Shengguan Zhaorong firmly said, I'm not willing. Wu Zhangkui said, Miss Shengguan, don't be in a hurry to refuse. If you come to my side, I will treat you sincerely and support your cultivation. I will even help you walk the path of the golden core. I will even go to the sect to learn a dual cultivation technique and cultivate with you. This kind of future was very tempting, especially cultivation. This was the only way to truly change one's fate. If one's talent was outstanding, one might even become a powerhouse one day. Shengguan Zhaorong said again with certainty, I'm not willing. She looked at Wu Zhangkui with disgust. Jiang Xiu said, he's right. Don't be in a hurry to refuse. Think about it. If you stay with me, I won't support your cultivation. There's no future for you. Shengguan Zhaorong said. Zhaorong is indebted to the young master. Zhaorong swears that I will do my best to take care of the young master. Unless the young master wants to swap Zhaorong out. Even so, Zhaorong has no complaints. These words were very touching. If it was a normal person, they would definitely be moved. However, Cheng Lingren's lesson made it hard for Jiang Xiu to believe that Shengguan Zhaorong's persistence was only because the temptation wasn't enough. Wu Zhangkui was just an ordinary disciple. If it was an elder's son or even an elder himself, perhaps the result would be different. Of course, people always hoped for beautiful things to happen. Jiang Xiu also hoped that what Shengguan Zhaorong said was true. Since she's not willing, then forget it. Wu Zhangkui anxiously frowned and said, Jiang Gu, could it be that you think 10 life pills is too little? Jiang Xiu said, people are priceless. His values were still different from those of them who were born and raised in immortal martial arts. Don't mention this matter again. Also, I'm warning you, don't have any ideas about Zhaorong. If I find out, I'll cut you down. Jiang Xiu turned hostile as soon as he said so. No matter how unwilling Wu Zhangkui was, there was nothing he could do. Facing a demon like Jiang Xiu, he was really afraid. Since it's like this, then I'll leave first. Tomorrow, we'll go participate in the inner sect exam together. When Shengguan Zhaorong came in again, Jiang Xiu carefully looked at her and said, when we have time, I'll take you to the sect to test your physique. When Wu Zhangkui mentioned dual cultivation, Jiang Xiu felt that it was very strange. He felt that Shengguan Zhaorong might have a special physique. Young master wants to take me to test my physique. Didn't young master say that he wouldn't support my cultivation? Jiang Xiu said. I'm just curious. Shengguan Zhaorong revealed a smile. When she smiled, it was even more lively than when she wasn't smiling. It made people think of the phrase, a smile that could topple a city. It was very attractive. Jiang Xiu secretly thought that she was indeed a one-in-a-million beauty. No wonder that big guy liked her. It doesn't matter if Zhaorong can cultivate or not. But Gardley is a sky immortal. He needs cultivation resources. Young Master has been gone for a month, and hasn't even gone to the sect to collect the resources. Jiang Xiu said. I forgot about that. Jiang Xiu really didn't care about the resources of the outer sect disciples. However, it should be distributed to the servants. How could the former sect master not know how to control his subordinates? Wait until the inner sect exam is over, Shengguan Zhaorong said. I'll listen to young master's arrangements. Her face was very bright. Jiang Xiu rejecting Wu Zhangkui made her very happy. Zhaorong, let Xiaoyu cook a few more dishes. Chapter 518. The next day, Wu Zhangkui came to find Jiang Xiu as promised to take the inner sect exam together. We are here to take the inner sect exam. Go in. The disciple at the door lazily filled in their information and went in. Remember to line up. When they came in, there were already more than a dozen people lined up in front of them. Among all the disciples, the number of inner sect disciples was actually the highest. There were relatively fewer outer sect disciples, and of course, the number of true disciples was the lowest. Looking at the horizon in the distance, between the white clouds, one could see a giant bell that emitted a faint golden light. Because the bell was far away, one couldn't tell how tall or big it was, but the color was deep and it felt very heavy. Jiang Xiu's life was loaded, and he had experienced all of this before. Although he was directly taken in as a true disciple, his master let him walk the path of a normal disciple. The purpose was to train him. That bell was the first test to become an inner sect disciple. In the mist, the sky bell was so big that it was impossible to see its full appearance. A white-haired old man stood below it, as small as an ant in a tall building. He carefully looked at the first disciple who came up for the exam. No matter how long you've been here, what stage you've reached, or what your cultivation is, stand behind the line and use your incantation. If you can't ring the bell, then you don't have the qualifications to become an inner sect disciple. You only have one chance. If you can't, then wait another 5 years. After he finished speaking, he took the registration information from the disciple beside him. Begin. Next, Wu Zichang. The one who walked out was a young man wearing a brocade robe. Outer sect disciples were the disciples with the lowest status in the sect, but they were also a group filled with hope. They were the future of the sect. His eyes flashed as he continuously chanted. With a rumbling sound, the incantation turned into light sand and rushed towards the sky bell. The sky bell didn't move at all. Not qualified. Next, the outer sect disciple named Wu Zichang's face fell. He dejectedly retreated to the side. The servant who came with him also had a look of pity. The second person who came up asked, "Can we use sword techniques?" The examiner pondered for a moment. His heart softened as he nodded and said, "Yes." Wu Zichang said excitedly, "Why can't I?" The old man then said, "Your sword cultivation is too low, and using your sword to strike the bell is far inferior to using your voice to strike the bell. Even if I let you use your sword technique, there won't be any improvement. Of course, I can give you a chance, but if you don't succeed, I will cancel the chance 5 years from now. If you want to take the test again, you will have to wait 10 years. When this old man was young, he was also hot-tempered. However, as he grew older, he became more and more tolerant of his disciples. The sect's rule was that the sky bell had to be rung with the sound of the incantation, so he had lowered his requirements. In reality, so what if he passed this kind of test? For those who stumbled in the early stages of a tall building, it would be even more difficult for them to walk on the later stages. Then disciple will come back in 5 years. Wu Zichang was scared away by the old man's words. Immortal slaying sword. So, the second disciple soared into the sky and slashed at the distant sky bell with his sword. The sharp sword light flashed and disappeared into the distance. The saber light instantly extended to 100 meters and heavily slashed at the sky bell. The heaven bell did not budge. Not qualified, not qualified. Next. The old man shook his head, looking very disappointed. The disciple who came to register couldn't even pass the first test. 2 senior brothers had failed in a row. The atmosphere in the examination hall suddenly changed. It was a little tense and a little serious. What's going on? How heavy is this sky bell? Even the immortal slaying sword can't break it. Wu Zhangkui's expression became very serious. Oh no, I probably won't pass either. Jiang Xiu was indifferent. Not being able to strike the bell was not a problem with the sword technique, but with the person. The sword technique was ultimately used by the person. Although that person had put a lot of effort into becoming a sword immortal, the sword cultivation realm was too low and the power was too weak. In addition, as the old man said, something like a bell could not be struck by a fierce attack. It was more afraid of the continuous accumulation of power, like the waves of the sea. Using the sound of the incantation was the first choice. Moreover, it could also test the disciple's incantation foundation. Not qualified. Not qualified. Jiang Xiu's servants were also watching from outside. Xiaoyu said, "The test is actually so difficult. Can the young master pass?" The status of the inner sect disciples was much higher than that of the outer sect disciples. Although they were still in the lower 3 peaks, if they were servants of the inner sect disciples, they would feel superior when they walked out. They had said that the servants of the inner sect disciples felt that their eyes were on top of their heads. Next, Tan Tashui. It was a young girl. Her appearance was far from Shangguan Zhaorong's. Although she was young, she was very calm and her eyes shone with a confident light. Begin. The young girl bowed slightly to the old man. After she stood still, she held a lotus in her hand and her mouth continuously spat out a profound incantation. The sound of the incantation spread out, giving off a sense of boundless power. On Earth, there was a saying that the music came from aliens. This was because every country in the world had it, and they were all at the same octave. The sound of the incantation was also a type of sound wave. It could let people feel the power contained in the sound of the incantation. When she opened her mouth, it was completely different from the previous people. That seemingly tangible power rushed out. Ding. The sound was not loud. It could even be said that it was inaudible. However, the old man laughed and said, "Qualified." Hua. There was an uproar in the field. Finally, there was a qualified person. Phew. The young girl let out a sigh of relief. Even she did not hear the sound, but the old man said that she passed. Of course, she knew that the old man would not be biased. It should have rung. Moreover, she could feel her incantation hitting the bell. Next, Wu Zhangkui. It was finally their turn. Ma Dong did not expect that Lu Changkong would call him over to ask about Jiang Xiu again. Because of this, Ma Dong even went to the law enforcement hall to ask the law enforcement senior brother. However, he did not get anything. Today, he heard that Jiang Xiu came out and participated in the inner disciple assessment. Therefore, he encouraged Xiao Wuchen to watch together with him. The main reason was to cause trouble. If Jiang Xiu entered the inner disciple assessment again, then he would be on the same level as him. Senior brother Wuchen, that kid's saber is quite interesting. If he wants to use it later, you have to stop him. This is also Elder Lu's idea. Lu Changkong only asked him to pay attention to Jiang Xiu's actions. Nothing else was wrong. Ma Dong was using the chicken feather as an arrow. Don't worry. This kid won't be able to enter the inner disciple. Wu Zhangkui came to the back of the line anxiously. His hands turned into a cloud of black smoke. As he waved his hands, he suddenly rushed out and formed a huge fist towards the sky bell. Forget about incantations and sword techniques. Fist techniques were his specialty. Luoyin Godly Fist. Ring it. The fist collided with the sky bell, and the cloud of smoke surged. Failed. Wu Zhangkui revealed his true form with a depressed face. His servants also lowered their heads. Ha ha ha, someone laughed. It was Xiao Wuchen. He could see that this person was the most shameless among all of them. He directly turned into a cloud of smoke and rushed over, which was equivalent to crossing the line. Even so, he didn't ring the sky bell. Looking at Wu Zhangkui's hopeless face, he couldn't help but laugh. Next, Jiang Xiu. Finally, the elder shouted Jiang Xiu's name. Although this person was a newcomer, he was amazing. On the first day, he kicked the elder's son off the cliff. On the second day, he went to jail. He was already a legend. Jiang Xiu. Which one is Jiang Xiu? A godlike handsome man casually walked out. He's really stupid. Ma Dong anxiously shouted. Exam elder, let me remind you that this kid is a troublemaker. He might cheat. You can't let him use a blade. Yes. Li Chang and Shangguan Zhaorong were anxious. Shangguan Zhaorong secretly said that these people were too despicable. Young master was a blade cultivator. Why couldn't he use a blade? Wasn't this bullying? My young master wants to use a blade. Everyone else uses what they're best at. That's right. Xiao Yu's tears were about to fall. Why were these people targeting young master? Was it because he was new? When the elder saw Jiang Xiu, a trace of displeasure flashed across his face. There was no other reason. He was too troublemaker. No teacher liked a naughty student. He said, using a blade is forbidden. Also, don't think about cheating. Don't be like the person in front of you, openly crossing the line. In the end, the sky bell still didn't ring. Jiang Xiu coldly glanced at Qin Wentian. Before he could even start, the first divine imprint on Jiang Xiu's arm suddenly erupted with an intense light. Jiang Xiu's long hair fluttered in the wind as he howled madly. His eyes flashed with an intense light as he uttered an incantation that shook the heavens and earth. The first sound of the heavens and earth. Hong! The moment the sound rang out, the sky bell suddenly shook. Boom! The sky bell exploded, shaking heaven and earth. A strong sound wave rushed over, and the surrounding disciples were all sent flying. The sound traveled thousands of miles, and resounded throughout the Tianqing school. Damn! Heavens! The sky bell was shattered by his curse. Pervert! Jiang Xiu's eyes were cold. Ji Daozong, this is the death knell this sovereign has rung for you. This sovereign has returned. Chapter 519. The sound waves reverberated far and wide. Everyone in the Tianqing school could hear it clearly from any angle. It also resounded in the residence of the sect leader on the main peak of the Tianqing school. The sect leader and the 13 celestial kings all heard it. There was an uproar in the examination hall. Everyone's eyes were focused on Jiang Xiu. They were all extremely shocked. He directly shattered the sky bell. What a freak! Jiang Xiu's expression was still indifferent. Although the first sound of heaven and earth was in a different world, its power could only be stronger in a stronger world. It was the origin of all sound, so its power could be imagined. Unfortunately, he only mastered the first sound and didn't have a complete system or specific meaning. Otherwise, its power would be even more shocking. The old man crawled out from the pile of fragments of the sky bell and the broken roof tiles. His head was like a weed, and he was dumbfounded. He couldn't recover from his shock. After a while he said, Espas. This sky bell had been hanging here for God knows how many years. It was the first time that it had been destroyed by a disciple from the outside world using talisman sounds. He couldn't even speak clearly. It could be seen how shocked the old man was. Young master passed? Even the bell was shattered. How is that not enough? Xiao Wuchen, Ma Dong, and the others were completely dumbfounded. This person was really an evil creature. It was already very rare for others to make a sound, but in the end, he directly shattered the bell. How much hatred does this bell have for you? Those who pass go down. As Jiang Xiu turned and left, the old man cast a deep glance at him. Over 3,000 years ago, even the previous sect leader of the immortal martial sect, Jiang Luo, wasn't as ferocious as him. The second test was speed. It was a misty sky. It looked very close, but in fact, it contained a formation. Many parts of the space were sunken and distorted. It looked extremely strange. The second test is mainly about escape techniques. Before the formation is triggered, you have to rush to the other side. Jiang Xiu looked up. With his eyesight, he could see how far the space inside the formation was. It was about 100 miles, compressed into a small circular space. Outside the formation, the incense burner would burn for the time it took to burn an incense stick. Once the incense burned out, the formation would press down, directly pressing down. It would be like a person passing through a cloud of dust. He would fall rapidly and would definitely fall miserably. 100 li? That's too far. I have to use my escape technique. My escape technique is 1 li. Doesn't that mean I have to use it 100 times? I don't have that much magic power. My sex heaven walk steps allows me to travel 1.5 li in a single step. I should be able to do it more than 60 times in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. The key is how I regulate my breathing. When Jiang Xiu arrived, there was already a group of people inside. The girl who passed the first round was also there. She still had a confident smile on her face. When they saw Jiang Xiu coming over, many people present looked over. The bell just now was really loud. Everyone was guessing who it was. According to the order of entry, it was most likely this person in front of them. However, there was also a possibility that they were wrong. In the distant sky, a ray of light was thrown over. It was astonishingly fast, like a graceful swan. In the next moment, it arrived in the field. Its speed was beyond the limit, and it had already surpassed the existence of ordinary matter. It felt like the martial cultivators on Earth had surpassed the sound barrier. It was a great visual impact. After cultivating for 2 lifetimes, Jiang Xiu naturally knew that it was the power of an immortal king. When everyone saw it, they all bowed. The examination elder also hurriedly went up to greet it. Subordinate greets eldering. Ing Ho, the law enforcement elder of Tianqing School, one of the 13 immortal kings. Jiang Xiu couldn't help but be shocked when he saw the person who came. His first reaction was to dodge. Elder, why are you here? Ing Ho said. With such a loud bell, the entire Tianqing School was alarmed. Those who didn't know would think that the sex alarm bell was rung, and that a great enemy was attacking. His gaze swept across the crowd. With such a big lineup, of course he had to come and see what kind of genius it was. If it was suitable, he had the intention to take it under his wing. I know that your assessment is important. There's no need to entertain me. You can continue. The examination elder nodded, cleared his throat and said, then we'll begin. The first one is Chen Deji. Yes. The first to come out was a tall man. He entered the array at the first moment. His figure flashed, and he quickly rushed to the far end. In the array, there was only a straight path in front of him. After 100 miles he would reach the end. From the outside, he looked like a ray of light, bringing along afterimages as he passed through the distorted space. So fast. This was like a long-distance race. If one was fast at the beginning, they wouldn't be fast all the way to the end. They had to use their spiritual energy reasonably. I wonder if the later stage can hold on. 50 miles, 60. After passing the halfway mark, his speed dropped significantly. He was different from mortals. Mortals couldn't release their full speed all at once. They had to release it slowly and clench their teeth to hold on until the end. However, immortals had much better control over their spiritual energy. They could release it all in an instant and collapse at the end. Therefore, they could collapse at any time. I can't take it anymore. Mystic Sun meets snow. Just as his spiritual energy was exhausted, he let out a low shout. His entire body seemed to have been revived on the spot. He immediately recovered his spiritual energy and rushed to the far end once again. Mystic Sun meets snow, yin and yang intertwining. Good technique. However, overdrawing the immortal body like this has serious consequences. I'm afraid that I won't be able to recover after a year and a half. If I can become an inner sect disciple, this little sacrifice is nothing. Before he finished speaking, the world in the array suddenly caved in. The distorted space pressed into the ground. The disciples inside were directly pressed to the bottom of the sky. Ah! Only inhuman screams could be heard coming from under the smoke. Time's up. So fast. The people behind who hadn't taken the test were extremely shocked. They turned their heads to look. Didn't the incense burn out? It was so fast just watching from the side. They would definitely feel even faster if they were in the array. It felt like the time it took for an incense to burn out. It was simply a technique that passed in the blink of an eye. You're not qualified. Next, many people in the following tests could only last 30 to 40 miles. There weren't many who could last even half of the distance. It wasn't limited by insufficient spiritual energy. It was more because their speed was too slow and their understanding of the escape technique was insufficient. Next, Tantakshu. Elder, can I take a shortcut? Shortcut? The testing elder looked puzzled. There was only one straight path in the array. Why would she take a shortcut? There are no rules. No matter what, you just have to arrive before the incense burns out and activates the array. Tantakshu's face lit up. After she entered the array, she saw that after she used the escape technique, the effect on the outside was different from that of the others. The others had distorted space. After she used it, it was no longer a distorted space. Instead, it was a semi-spherical shadow. Floating space escape technique. The elder was shocked. No wonder, she said she took a shortcut. It turns out that she has mastered a higher-level escape technique. It's rare. Having a higher-level escape technique was one thing. Mastering it was another. I'm here. She arrived just before the incense burned out. Tantakshu heaved a sigh of relief and patted her chest. Qualified. Next, Jiang Xiu. When Jiang Xiu's name was called, everyone looked over. Ingho's eyes also fell on Jiang Xiu. He just glanced at him and pondered for a moment. Maybe it was because he felt familiar, or maybe it was because Jiang Xiu was a divine cultivator. Jiang Xiu's heart skipped a beat. However, he was a divine cultivator and used a saber. His appearance had changed so much. Most importantly, since everyone in the Tianqing school thought that he was dead, there should be no reason for them to think of him. If they suspected that he was Jiang Luoxia's people, he would be a great suspect. Because they knew that Jiang Luoxia was not dead. It's him. He was the one who rang the bell just now. The examination elder also had a special impression of Jiang Xiu. Because of his outstanding performance in the last round, many people thought highly of Jiang Xiu's talent. He also wanted to see how strong Jiang Xiu was. Jiang Xiu walked out unhurriedly. Come on, young master. Shengguan Zhaorong and the others also came here to watch Jiang Xiu's test. Only the servants of the disciples who entered the second round could enter. They could be considered to be awe-inspiring. Chapter 520. Let's begin. The exam elder was also looking forward to seeing if Jiang Xiu would shine in this round. At the same time, he was also looking forward to seeing if Jiang Xiu would fail in this round. That would be interesting. Looking at the array in front of him, Jiang Xiu felt that it was very interesting. In the past, he hated array formations. It was too complicated and cumbersome. There were too many things to calculate and too much knowledge to learn. But for the sake of the position of the sect master, he forced himself to study and study hard. In the end, he became an array formation master. He slowly walked into the array. He will succeed? There was a gentle breeze in the array, causing his clothes to flutter. The powerful incantation did not mean that the escape technique was superb, especially for a young cultivator like him. He only had so much time in total. Under the circumstances of limited time, if he could master one thing, he would not have the time to learn anything else. He saw the scene inside the formation distort strangely. He only took a step forward, and his figure came out from the other end of the strange formation. He did it so casually. The law enforcement disciple who lit the incense did not have time to retract his hand. He turned his head and saw Jiang Xiu come out from the other end of the array. What's going on? He arrived. The incense was just lit and he arrived? What's going on? How did he suddenly appear 100 miles away? When everyone realized that Jiang Xiu was really standing at the end of the array, the onlookers all shouted. This was too inconceivable. It was simply unimaginable. Clatter. The register in the law enforcement elder's hand fell to the ground. How did he do it? After so many years of taking the test, this was the first time he encountered such a situation. He arrived in an instant. This speed was probably comparable to an immortal king, but he was clearly only a lower heaven god. After a while, the exam elder recovered from his shock and said, Jiang Xiu, pass. A smile appeared on Jiang Xiu's face. Although he didn't know what was going on, he was completely shocked by Jiang Xiu's performance. First, it was the sound of the bell that resounded through the entire sky. Then it was Jiang Xiu who could travel hundreds of miles in an instant. He had never seen such a stunning new disciple. One of the elders in the crowd said, "How is it? Did you see that? This kid was able to break through during the Jialan dynasty's selection. It's clear that he's a genius. You guys should feel the pressure. Apart from him, don't underestimate Song Gongming and Yi Fei. Their talents are 1 in a million." Song Gongming I know. Half a month ago, he defeated senior brother Lu Jian, who was known as a genius in the inner sect. Now many people are talking about him. Song Gongming indeed has the right to be arrogant. Yi Fei too. That elder said. Could it be that this Jiang Xiu isn't? Until now, everyone was still very confused. How did Jiang Xiu know? Because they didn't know how Jiang Xiu did it, they felt even more shocked. Their whole person was covered with a layer of mystery. Humans were always more in awe of the unknown. Some people glanced at Eldering Ho. Only this immortal King Realm expert could answer their doubts. His gaze was fixed on Jiang Xiu. At a certain moment, he felt a sense of familiarity, but he couldn't remember who Jiang Xiu was. However, very quickly, Jiang Xiu brought him a pleasant surprise. He lightly spat out 2 words, "Break the formation." Only then did everyone understand. Jiang Xiu's unimaginable methods were revealed to everyone. Although this heaven and earth great formation was hundreds of miles wide, it wasn't a straight line. Once the formation was broken, a small escape technique would be able to reach it. So it's like this. Then this kid's attainments in formations are extremely high. Breaking the formation was much harder than using an escape technique to travel hundreds of miles in an instance's time. What a pity, what a pity. Ing Ho's eyes revealed admiration, but he also sighed helplessly. He regretted that Jiang Xiu was only a divine cultivator. If he was an immortal cultivator, he would take Jiang Xiu in as his disciple no matter what. This kid was definitely a talent to be an elder. However, if he was a divine cultivator, he couldn't accept him. He wasn't a spiritual cultivation expert, so how could he be a teacher? So it's to break the formation. Everyone looked at Jiang Xiu again. Previously, they only felt that this person was arrogant and didn't know how to restrain himself. But now the formation had added a halo of wisdom to him. Those who learned the formation were all wise people with outstanding wisdom. Young master is too amazing. Xiaoya was extremely excited. Li Chang also found it difficult to remain calm. When he was in the Jialanjiang family, he had already been amazed by Jiang Xiu. However, the more he interacted with Jiang Xiu, the more mysterious and powerful he felt. Even when he came to the Tianqing school, where geniuses were everywhere, he was already a genius, a true genius among geniuses. I wonder how fast his cultivation is? The content of the 3rd test was the outer sect battle. In the Tianqing school, there was a cliff. On it was the ranking of the outer sect disciples. The examination elder would hang a wooden plate with the disciple's name on it, and then arrange the group. The examination elder may have been annoyed by the disciples' questions. You can ask your senior brothers and sisters about the rules of the group. Don't come to ask me. In the Tianqing school, the last elimination system was implemented. The last outer sect disciple would be eliminated, and the last few inner sect disciples would fall to the outer sect. There was no doubt that the inner sect disciples had a great advantage over the outer sect disciples. Young master, do you want Zhao Rong to inquire about the rules of the ranking? Jiang Xiu shook his head gently and said, No, it's the same as anyone. These words were extremely arrogant, but spiritual cultivation was telling the truth. On the side, a senior sister who was quite qualified reminded him, You're a newcomer, right? If you don't even know the rules, I advise you to take advantage of the time before it's your turn to go to the ancient sect to gain experience. Kill some demons and monsters and accumulate some actual combat experience. Otherwise, Yes, we were all stunned the first time we participated. Our fellow disciples were so ruthless. Every move was fatal, and they showed no mercy. Jiang Xiu smiled faintly. What was the point of the inner sect battle if you showed mercy everywhere? When you were really facing life and death, would others show mercy? Absolutely not. He was only afraid that you wouldn't die thoroughly enough. Thank you for your advice. A voice came from the side. Hey, will you participate in the outer sect battle? Turning his head, it turned out to be the girl named Tan Takshu. She was close to Jiang Xiao. They were all participating in the examination together. She had already faintly regarded Jiang Xiao as a rival. I'm going to give up. I'll come back in 5 years. She had been observing here for a while. She felt that her strength was not enough, so she could only endure. This was a very down-to-earth and planned girl. She was not like some people who entered the Tianqing school with the attitude of trying their luck. No one who entered the Tianqing school was a vegetarian. Jiang Xiao said, "Of course." More people were talking about the rewards if they won. In the distance, there was a beautiful girl and a servant girl who were paying attention to the situation of the outer sect battle. "Miss, what's so interesting about the battle between the outer sect disciples?" the young lady said. "Actually, the most interesting ones are the outer sect, because they are the hope of the sect. Every time, there will be new disciples appearing. Furthermore, there are only so many true disciples coming and going. Everyone knows the ins and outs of the competition, and they all know who will win and who will lose." "Then has Miss paid attention to anyone?" The girl's gaze searched through the countless people, and finally fell on Jiang Xiao. She said him. It was not because she knew that Jiang Xiao was talented, but because Jiang Xiao had helped her a little that day. This girl was Qin Qing. "Is he very powerful?" Qin Qing said with a smile. "Very powerful. He kicked Gu Qian down the mountain." "So it's him." The servant girl was very surprised. She looked carefully at Jiang Xiao. "He's really brave. He even dared to offend Mr. Gu. He'll definitely have a hard time in the Tianqing school in the future." Qin Qing said, "Indeed. Gu Qian wasn't drunk that day and wouldn't have lost so much face. And with Gu Qian's personality, he'll definitely be in trouble." "Are we just going to let him be?" Qin Qing said. "What else can we do? I didn't ask him to help. If he wants to be a hero, he needs to have the strength of a hero. Otherwise, he'll end up being a coward. Besides, I can't help him even if I want to. I'm almost annoyed to death by Gu Qian." Suddenly, there was a commotion in the distance. A handsome man was walking towards them, surrounded by a group of people. Qin Qing suddenly reached out and grabbed her maid. In a flash, they appeared in the distant mountains. She said unhappily, "Gu Qian is here. Why is he here to watch the outer sect battle?" Chapter 521. As the outer sect station was open to the public, the sound of the heavenly drum being beaten spread out. Heroes from all sides nearby rushed over. Some of these people were the sect leaders of small sects, some were the patriarchs of large clans, rich people, strong cultivators, loose cultivators, and even some emperors. So many people. Shangguan Zhaorong and the other maidservants were dazzled by the scene in front of them. In the middle of the sky, there were dozens of huge floating peaks that could rise and fall, and all around them were spectators. So spectacular. The spectators' seats were all very high, and looking down from above, they could even see the mountains surrounding the floating peaks that were shrouded in smoke. Young master." Shangguan Zhaorong's voice was a little strange. Jiang Xiao followed her line of sight and saw a few disciples. The leader was actually Gu Qian, who was kicked off the cliff by him. It was said that he fell very miserably. Those who came did not come with good intentions. Their qi is so strong. Even if Shangguan Zhaorong did not cultivate, she could directly feel it. This was deliberately done by Gu Qian and the others to intimidate the surrounding disciples. It was much more effective than shouting that they were true disciples. The appearance of this true disciple also attracted a lot of attention. In addition, this child was the son of an elder. His status was revered. One must know that it was not easy for a cultivator to have a child. Now that they finally had a child, they all treated it as a treasure. As expected of a true disciple, this aura, tsk. Many people sighed in amazement. Jiang Xiao was still indifferent, and did not feel anything at all. He found that his stunning performance in the previous 2 tests was quickly drowned out by the chaotic crowd. More and more people's gazes were focused on the true disciples, elders of the sects, and others. "Stop." A lazy voice was heard, but it carried a commanding tone that left no room for doubt. "What's the matter?" The one who stopped Jiang Xiu was the true disciple, the son of an elder, Gu Qian. His gaze fell on Jiang Xiu's face, and he laughed involuntarily. You still dare to ask me what the matter is? He was kicked off the cliff by Jiang Xiu when he was drunk. Now he had become the laughingstock of the upper three peaks, which made him lose face. It was already a bit embarrassing that he couldn't get the girl. He even drank to drown his sorrows and was kicked off the cliff by a small outer sect disciple. There were more than 30 fractures all over his body. If it wasn't for his immortal body, his life would be over. Jiang Xiu just looked at him indifferently. Shangguan Zhaorong and the others on the side were so nervous that their faces turned pale. You brat, you really have guts. You actually dared to kick me. Jiang Xiu said, why wouldn't I dare? Could it be that you want to fight me here? Gu Qian sneered. Brat, you're very smart. Of course, no one would dare to make a move on the assessment grounds, and I wouldn't either. Did you think that I wouldn't be able to deal with you then? Jiang Xiu was calm and composed. I heard that your talent isn't bad. No wonder you're so arrogant. However, you've offended me, Gu Qian. Do you think you can still make a name for yourself in Tianqing school? Let me tell you, dream on. He slowly approached Jiang Xiu. His voice was very soft, but that low voice made people feel incomparably scared. Gu Qian was completely different when he was sober, and when he was drunk. He was domineering and cold. I want you to deliberately lose in the outer sect battle. If you dare to win, I'll cut off your hand. Shangguan Zhaorong's face completely changed when she heard this. The inner sect battle was only held once every 5 years. If the young master missed it, he would have to wait for another 5 years. During these 5 years, Jiang Xiu's resources could only be those of the outer sect disciples. Then his cultivation would be delayed. He would be left far behind by his peers. At that time, he would no longer have the title of a genius. He would no longer be dazzling. The sect's support for him would decline, and he would be destroyed. Jiang Xiu responded softly, Oh, brat, be sensible. Although Gu Qian couldn't make a move, he still slammed into Jiang Xiu and forced him aside. Then he walked past him. The little brother beside him even reached out and pushed Jiang Xiu. Get out of the way, don't block the way. Xiaoye said anxiously, Young master, what should we do? Do we have to listen to him? If they didn't listen, Gu Qian would definitely do what he said. However, if they listened, their future would be ruined. Jiang Xiu looked at their receding figures and thought of Gu Deqian. When he was in power, Gu Deqian could be considered to have supported him. To be more precise, this person was very deep. He wasn't weak, and he was even more scheming. Generally, he followed the crowd. He didn't know how much he was involved in the early change of sect leader. Let's go. But young master. What Jiang Xiu didn't expect was that Qin Qing had seen everything from afar. Under her special attention, she knew everything that happened between the two of them. She brought her servant and appeared in front of Jiang Xiu. It's you. Qin Qing's expression was serious as she said, Let's talk in private. Jiang Xiu said, We don't seem to have anything to talk about. Qin Qing's servant was furious. How important was the young miss? A true disciple came to find him, and he still put on airs. She said angrily, You, Jiang Xiu said. If you have something to say, say it. If not, I don't have time to stay. Qin Qing thought to herself that he had quite a personality. She could only say, I heard everything senior brother Gu said to you. So what? Qin Qing said. Then aren't you afraid? Jiang Xiu coldly snorted. Every disciple that was targeted by Gu Qian would be frightened. After being bullied for a long time, they would have to bear a lot of pressure and fear. Afraid? Why should I be afraid? Qin Qing's servant interrupted. You're still stubbornly holding on. Qin Qing said, Senior brother Gu is Elder Gu's beloved son. Elder Gu only has this one son, and he treasures him dearly. Elder Gu is also famous for being protective of his children. Offending senior brother Gu is really troublesome. Previously, a few of my fellow disciples offended him. Some of them were framed and imprisoned, some of them were forced to leave the sect with a crime, and some were forced to commit suicide. Some of the people she mentioned were her original suitors. There were also some who couldn't stand to see Gu Qian go against him. So, Jiang Xiu still didn't believe it. Qin Qing said, "So you should listen to him and give up on the outer sect competition. There's no need to show off for a moment, and throw yourself into it. Of course, if you give up on the outer sect competition, you'll lose the qualifications to enter the inner sect. Your cultivation resources will be greatly reduced, and it will greatly affect your cultivation speed." She hesitated for a moment before saying, "This matter is related to me. How about this? The resources you lose in these 5 years, I can make it up to you." "Miss," Jiang Xiu said, "you'll make it up to me?" Jiang Xiu was also a bit surprised. Resources were money, and she was giving it to him for free. Of course, it couldn't be considered for free. After all, Jiang Xiu was helping her to get out of trouble. But if she was willing to give him money like this girl's heart wasn't bad. She was still captivated by his elegance, and didn't hesitate to do such a thing. Qin Qing said, "Yes, I'll make it up to you. 5 years is enough for him to forget about this matter. This way, it can be considered a compromise." Of course, an inner sect disciple's resources couldn't be compared to a true disciple's. A true disciple had a master. In addition to the sect's normal high proportion of resources, the master would occasionally give you some if she was in a good mood. An inner sect disciple's resources were only about 1/10 of that, which was within the range she could bear. "You should think about it carefully. You should know where to find me. At that time, you didn't come by yourself. You'll only cause trouble. In the future, let her come." Qin Qing pointed at Shangguan Zhaorong, who was standing behind Jiang Xiu. Gu Qian was pursuing Qin Qing. If he saw Jiang Xiu walking close to Qin Qing, then the consequences would be even more serious. But if it was a girl who came in and out of Qin Qing's place, then there wouldn't be such a possibility. "Remember my words. You must not provoke Gu Qian again." After saying this, Qin Qing glanced at Jiang Xiu and turned to leave. "That's great, young master. Even if he doesn't enter the inner sect, it won't affect his cultivation." Moreover, it wasn't 100% certain that Jiang Xiu would enter the inner sect. Although the maidservants were very confident, there was still some suspense. This was equivalent to a guaranteed entry. "Young master, this fairy is quite a good person. Even if you helped her, she actually repaid your kindness. Could it be that she has taken a liking to you?" Shangguan Zhaorong asked. "It must be." Xiaoya giggled. In the middle of the floating peak, the examination elders had already begun drawing lots. First, they had to put their names on the stone wall. Sometimes it was a horizontal line, sometimes it was a vertical line. Then, they began to draw the 2 sides for the battle. Although it wasn't very fair, it prevented cheating to a certain extent. Chapter 522. Coincidentally, Jiang Xiu's opponent in the 4th region had a seeded contestant. Of course, this wasn't announced by the officials, but by the disciples themselves. His name was Yi Fei, and he was a contestant with outstanding strength. Apart from a few who had hidden their strength and shocked the world with a single brilliant feat, the disciples were well aware of the cultivation level of most of the disciples, and had sparred with them on a daily basis. There was also another disciple who fell from the inner sect, Ma Mingrong. However, it was hard to say what kind of person he was. After falling, some people would strive to catch up, while others would be unable to recover from the setback. Heaven's Path Flame Burst Fist. Yi Fei roared angrily, and his entire body flew up into the air. He threw a punch at his opponent, and with a bang, blazing sparks flew everywhere. Suddenly, the flames rose sharply, engulfing the explosive power. Jiang Xiu had once simplified this fist technique, and passed it on to the military on Earth. However, compared to the flames that filled the sky, the shadows of the fist within, and the sounds of explosions that rang out incessantly, the difference was insignificant. So strong! The people below the stage all called out for the battle. To be able to exert such great power from this mid-level fist technique, one could see that his comprehension and talent were indeed extraordinary. His opponent was directly sent flying by the power of the flames in front of him. Yi Fei wins. When he came down, he said, "Not bad, the first opponent is not bad. This is just the beginning, don't expose too much of your strength." The people beside him reminded him, I know that. The competition proceeded very quickly. The gap between the outer disciples was quite big. Some were still at the earthen immortal stage, while some were already at the heavenly immortal stage. The celestial motion sect mainly looked at one's talent and not one's current strength. 4th region, 13th group. Shangguan Zhaorong had been paying attention and reminded him, "Young master, it's our turn." Jiang Xiu flew up the floating peak, but his opponent was already one step ahead. He glanced at his opponent, who was in the early stage of lower heaven immortal. His opponent held a long sword, and the sword's edge flashed with light, looking very sharp. Lose. That person abruptly thrust out his long sword and pointed his sword finger at the floating long sword. The flying sword in the air split into 2, then into 4. In the blink of an eye, dozens of flying swords spread out. The sword-splitting technique of the natal sword body. Go. He then charged forward, and the floating sword seemed to have a strong connection with his body, moving with him. He then pointed his finger at Jiang Xiu. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Countless flying swords shot towards Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu secretly shook his head. This sword-splitting technique was not an attack. Low-level sword cultivators always had a misconception that the more swords they had, the more powerful they would be. This was not wrong, but with such a low cultivation and dharma power, controlling so many flying swords was like an old cow pulling a cart. It was like a person struggling to hold a sword. So how could he cause great damage? If he was not careful, he might even hurt himself. Jiang Xiu's eyes swept over, bringing with them a terrifying cold light. He gently raised his hand and flicked his finger. This flick caused a thunderous explosion in the sky. The energy from his fingertip rushed out, like a spray machine, instantly piercing through the void. Suddenly, it expanded and rushed over like a violent tsunami. Whoosh! The two of them were not more than 100 meters away when they saw the flying swords were all blown back, as if they had encountered a typhoon. However, in the fierce wind, there was a flash of light. That disciple shouted, "My sword!" When the light faded, it could be seen that the sword in the air was directly crushed into pieces by the power and fell to the ground. Unsurprisingly, Jiang Xiu won the first round. He dares to win? Gu Qian's expression turned cold, and his eyes were filled with anger. He definitely doesn't dare to. Does he want to die? This is only the first round, and he wants to experience it. However, this kid is quite strong. This move seems to be mainly the transformation of the spell, someone at the side said. Immortal martial arts was the fusion of immortal and martial arts. The lower levels were mainly based on martial arts, and immortal martial arts were supplementary. However, the higher the level, the more immortal martial arts were the main. Jiang Xiu was only at this level, but he was using immortal martial arts as the main force, and the power was so strong. It was really shocking. So what? Destroying a genius is much more interesting than destroying an idiot. The group of people laughed sinisterly. Miss, how did he win? This is only the first round. Gu Qian did not allow him to enter the inner sect. Young master, Shangguan Zhaorong and the others were very conflicted. On one hand, they were happy to see Jiang Xiu win. On the other hand, they knew that Jiang Xiu had to lose. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Too hateful. Unsurprisingly, in the next round, the second round, the third round, the fourth round, until the 7th round, Jiang Xiu advanced triumphantly. He defeated all his opponents with one move. He did not spend any effort at all, and his points were getting higher and higher. Jiang Ge, you are too strong. You actually won 7 consecutive rounds so easily. It seems that I was worried about you for nothing. Ah. Wu Zhangkui also came to watch the battle. When he saw Jiang Xiu return with another big victory, he laughed loudly. Jiang Ge has a lot of hope. Jiang Xiu treated him coldly. Shangguan Zhaorong also did not like him. However, Wu Zhangkui was not embarrassed at all. Shangguan Zhaorong whispered in Jiang Xiu's ear, "Young master, the next round is the strongest, Yi Fei. In the 9th district, only you and him have won. If you win again, you will definitely enter the inner sect. You are going to lose." Jiang Xiu's winning streak and his outstanding performance in the first 2 rounds had attracted a lot of attention. His promotion index kept rising. Your strength is not bad. Miss, I remember that it was not so easy for you to enter the inner sect. Indeed. Qingqing looked at Jiang Xiu. What a pity. Qingqing turned her eyes to Gu Qian. This person was really abominable. He actually used such a method to persecute her junior brother. It was a huge loss for the sect that such a talent was suppressed. The next round is the most important one. This kid must lose. Gu Qian's face revealed a playful expression. Playing with the fate of others in the palm of his hand made him feel incomparably excited. The thrill of destruction was one aspect, but more importantly, he liked to see Jiang Xiu's expression of being humiliated, but not daring to speak up. Next round, Yi Fei versus Jiang Xiu. Whoosh. Yi Fei flew towards the center of the stage like a bird. It felt as if he had merged with the wind, invisible and traceless. Good movement. The people below the stage cheered. Yi Fei had hidden his strength before. Now he was actually at the middle stage of lower heaven immortal. That inconceivable ethereal feeling should be related to refining the immortal wind. Junior brother Jiang, please advise me. Although his words were polite, his tone was playful. Junior brother Jiang, you use a saber, right? I will stand here and let you cut me. If you can cut me, you win. Whoosh. As soon as he said that, the whole audience was in an uproar. From Yi Fei's movement just now, it could be seen that this person was talented, especially his understanding of wind. It was ethereal and free, which seemed to be different from others. His previous opponents, no matter how fast their swordsmanship was, could not catch up with his movement. Now that he showed a stronger strength, perhaps Jiang Xiu's saber really could not cut him. Too arrogant. There was no way to play. If he could not cut him even if he stood there and let him cut him, what was the point of this? This is not arrogance but confidence. Although Jiang Xiu has been winning before, it was because the opponents he met were very weak. His winning streak was largely due to luck. This was a duel that everyone was paying attention to. Yi Fei is too scary. He did not use his full strength before. Jiang Xiu's eyes were indifferent, but he glanced at the distance. There stood Gu Qian, the successor disciple and the son of an elder. Gu Qian raised his head proudly with a playful smile on his lips, as if to say that Jiang Xiu's fate was in his hands. You don't regret it? Of course. Jiang Xiu lifted his hand slightly. Suddenly, a beam of blade light shot out. With a swoosh, it was a beam of light that disappeared in a flash. However, at this moment, everything in the world seemed to be cut apart by this beam of light. Yi Fei did not see how Jiang Xiu released the saber. He only saw the flash of the saber light, and then he felt his consciousness gradually fading away. Puff! Yi Fei was cut from the middle. Blood spurted out from the inside due to the pressure. Puff, puff, puff. Blood splattered on the arena, still warm, and the corpse began to turn cold. Dead, dead, dead? Puff. The corpse fell to the ground, split into 2 halves. What? Gu Qian suddenly opened his eyes wide, looking at Yi Fei's corpse on the arena. His face became extremely ugly, and his whole body began to tremble. You dare to disobey my order? Chapter 523. Gu Qian's chest seemed to be burned by a flame. Gu Qian's whole body trembled violently. He looked at Jiang Xiu as if he wanted to eat him. Jiang Xiu was challenging him and counterattacking him. Killing Yi Fei with one slash was like a slap to his face. Killed directly? Instant kill? Gu Qian had just said that if Jiang Xiu could cut him, he would lose. As a result, Jiang Xiu directly killed him with one slash. The bloody corpse no longer breathed. While shocking everyone, they also felt the horror of Jiang Xiu. This, Qingqing and her maid were dumbfounded. Being able to kill the opponent in one slash was enough to shock people. Not to mention that there was also a layer of Gu Qian's bullying and oppression. This was not only killing, but also killing for Gu Qian to see. What is he doing? Is he declaring war on Gu Qian? Not to mention that Gu Qian was Elder Gu's son, he was also a successor disciple. He was definitely not someone a new disciple like Jiang Xiu could compare to. If Gu Qian really wanted to take his life, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. Yi Fei's eyes were still bulging on the ground. He seemed to be unable to believe that Jiang Xiu's slash was so fast and so ruthless that it directly took his life. This match Jiang Xiu wins. The exam elder frowned and said, although every match could be a life and death battle, he really didn't like to kill his own fellow disciples. Jiang Xiu won in this round and can directly enter the inner sect. Congratulations, you have become an inner sect disciple. Wu Zhangkui cried out. Brother Jiang, well done. But this fellow's heart was also a bit cold. Jiang Xiu's killing had scared him out of his wits. Originally, he was still thinking about Jiang Xiu's servant girl. He shouted happily, but Shangguan Zhaorong, Li Chang, and the others were all stunned and pale. It's over, it's really over. Young master had offended senior brother Gu. It was foreseeable that the terrifying senior brother Gu would never let Jiang Xiu go. He might not be able to stay in Tianqing school, or even walk out of Tianqing school alive. Why? Not only Shangguan Zhaorong and the others, but even Qin Qing in the distance was secretly shaking her head. If he wanted to court death, no one could help him. Jiang Xiu said, Exam elder, register for the inner sect battle. What? The invigilating elder was stunned. He had just become an inner disciple, yet he was going to participate in the inner disciple competition. The strength of an inner disciple was not comparable to that of an outer disciple. Moreover, those who participated in the inner disciple competition were aiming to become a successor disciple. Their strength was infinitely close to that of a successor disciple, which was the core strength of Tianqing school. The surrounding audience also began to discuss spiritedly. The outer sect battle and the inner sect battle were two entirely different concepts. Nonsense. The invigilating elder's face turned red with anger. What do you think the inner sect tournament is? Was this child's play? Do you think that just because you can enter the inner sect, you dare to challenge those true disciples? Ridiculous. The invigilating elder was quite old. He hated those who were arrogant just because they had a little talent. The inner sect was the hardest to break through. Most of the disciples in Tianqing school were inner sect disciples. The competition was extremely cruel. Many people had been in Tianqing school for thousands of years. For example, this invigilating elder had never been able to break through and become a successor disciple in Tianqing school. Why would a new disciple want to participate in the inner sect battle? There was a ranking in the inner sect. It wasn't that they couldn't participate, but those who had some self-awareness would only have a chance if they were ranked near the top 200. It was also once every 5 years. Moreover, it would be held in the near future. The time would be slightly later than the outer sect battle, so it was just right to stagger. Jiang Xiu said. It seems that the sect doesn't have a rule that disciples who have just entered the inner sect are not allowed to participate in the inner sect battle. You're just an outer sect director responsible for registration. If I tell you to sign up, then sign up. Why do you have so much nonsense to say? You. The invigilating elder was so angry that his beard blew and his eyes widened. Good. Let's see how you embarrass yourself when the time comes. Jiang Xiu coldly snorted. His eyes swept over and pointed at Gu Qian. Gu Qian, you used your status as an elder's son to force me to deliberately lose the battle. Did you think that I would use it? Hua. Jiang Xiu's words once again stirred up 1,000 waves. Countless people whispered to each other. This is too much. He actually dares to bully a fellow disciple. That's right. He's just relying on his father's status as an elder. Gu Qian did not expect that Jiang Xiu would dare to expose this matter in front of everyone. He was greatly shocked. Facing the crowd, he felt a little guilty. No matter what, this matter was his fault. It should not be exposed. Even if someone secretly knew about it, it would be because of his father, Elder Gu. They would definitely not dare to say anything. However, if it caused public opinion, then the pressure would be great. More importantly, before Gu Qian's warning and bullying could be achieved, Jiang Xiu had killed his opponent in front of everyone and entered the inner sect. This gave him a ruthless slap in the face. Now that he said it out loud, it was even more embarrassing. Gu Qian. Listen to me. Not only will I enter the inner sect, but I will also win the inner sect battle and challenge you. Wash your neck and wait for your death. Hua. Once again there was an uproar. Too arrogant. Was this a public declaration of war? Gu Qian's face was extremely ugly. The muscles at the corner of his mouth could not help but twitch. It was the first time in his life that he was put on the spot. He coldly said, "All right, I'll be waiting for you. Don't disappoint me." After that, he could not stay any longer, and turned to leave. Miss, he actually turned against Gu Qian in public and even wants to challenge him. Qin Qing's maidservant's face was filled with disbelief. All these years, they had been harassed by Gu Qian and could only endure it. Qin Qing looked at him, and her expression became very strange. "Miss," Qin Qing turned and said, "let's go. He doesn't need our help. Don't ask for a rebuff. Maybe." She paused and her eyes were a little dim. Maybe he would rather die than be humiliated. Jiang Xiu's performance was truly breathtaking, shocking the people around him. If he was given enough time, he might really be able to grow. It wasn't enough for a person to just have talent. They still had to have good fortune and good character. Wasn't it often said that one's character determined one's fate? Given Jiang Xiu's tyrannical character, it would be very difficult for him to walk far. Some people were destined to become tragic characters because they were unwilling to accept their fate. Qin Qing did not think that he could defeat Gu Qian. Even if he won, there was still Elder Gu behind him. That was a celestial king. Jiang Xiu's actions were more like a kind of venting of his unwillingness to accept his death. "Let's go." Jiang Xiu turned and left with his maidservant. This matter swept through the entire Tianqing school like a gust of wind. Compared to those fights, this battle with the color of gratitude and resentment and the great disparity in strength was more interesting. Who didn't like to see a weakling being bullied? However, no one was optimistic about Jiang Xiu's chances. If Jiang Xiu wanted to challenge Gu Qian, he first had to stand out in the inner sect. However, to do this, he would need to spend a lot of time. They definitely did not believe that Jiang Xiu could do it. After the outer sect battles, it was time for the inner sect battles. Because of the presence of Jiang Xiu and Yi Fei, Jiang Xiu's area was swept away like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves. It only took half a day for it to end. However, many of the other outer sect stations were caught in a stalemate and did not end until 5 days later. 5 days later, it would be the inner sect battles that everyone was looking forward to. The disciples who had been painstakingly preparing for the rankings were already extremely talented. After the incident between Jiang Xiu and Gu Qian broke out, it became even more exciting. Not to mention the ordinary disciples, even the true disciples, peak masters, and elders showed a certain degree of interest. The news also reached the ears of Gu Qian's father, Gu Deqian. Ying Hou also gave his evaluation of Jiang Xiu. His talent is very shocking. So much so that at a certain moment, Ying Hou felt a familiar aura. He couldn't recall it before, but when this matter spread, especially when he killed Yi Fei on the spot and challenged Gu Qian, he was so direct and domineering. He really resembled that person. If the heavens obstructed him, he would destroy the heavens. If the earth obstructed him, he would stomp on the earth and destroy everything. Does he have other disciples outside? Being the disciple of the sect leader was a supreme honor. Not to mention, with Jiang Luoxia's high standards, how many people in the entire immortal martial continent would be able to enter his eyes? The time isn't right either. From Jiang Xiu's fate wheel, he is indeed only in his 20s. There's no overlap in time. If it was just inheritance, cultivation wasn't something that could be achieved in a short period of time. He had so many disciples, but there wasn't a second one. It was impossible for a single one to appear and replicate his previous path. Coincidence? Maybe during the inner sect battles he will be taught a lesson. Chapter 524. There were 10 disciples in the inner sect, the so-called 10 seeds. They were ranked in the top 10 of the inner sect. Each one of them was not only famous in Tianqing school, but they were also well known outside. Every single one of them was far stronger than ordinary disciples. To be able to stand above others in the Sky Motion sect, they were all outstanding geniuses. Even so, there was still a huge gap between them and true disciples. It was said that the weakest of the 10 disciples had reached the middle level of Celestial Immortal, and the few who were ranked higher were even upper-level Celestial Immortals. But if they were not favored by the master, they still had to wait. Of course, those who won in the inner sect were qualified to challenge true disciples and win a chance for themselves. Usually, if they could win against true disciples, those high and mighty elders would not turn a blind eye to it. It could be seen that Jiang Xiu was still far from the top strength of the inner sect. He's only at the early stage of lower celestial immortal. This was what Jiang Xiu registered when he entered the sect. He wants to challenge true disciples? In your dreams. Jiang Xiu took time to go to the inner sect. He was now a somewhat famous madman in the sect. He dared to argue with anyone, and was ruthless. Some of the deacons in the inner sect were also afraid of him, and did not dare to make things difficult for him. Junior brother Jiang is here to collect resources? Jiang Xiu said. Yes, last month and this month. The deacon said with some difficulty. Junior brother Jiang, you were still in the outer sect last month. You should go to the outer sect to collect resources. I can only give you 1 month's worth of resources. Jiang Xiu said. That's why I didn't collect them last month. I kept them until now. This, Jiang Xiu said. Is there a problem? Don't you want to make things difficult for me? Make things difficult? The deacon looked bitter. You even dared to kick Elder Gu's son down the mountain, and shamelessly told him to wash his neck and wait for death. Who in the inner sect would dare to provoke you? Junior brother Jiang is joking. Jiang Xiu said. Then don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and give me the things. Don't waste my time. Left with no choice, the deacon could only suffer in silence and give 2 sets of resources to Jiang Xiu. When Jiang Xiu walked out of the door with the resources, he spat at his back. Let's see how long you can be arrogant. Back home, Jiang Xiu called in Li Chang and a group of maidservants. Jiang Xiu gestured for them to take a seat. He pointed at the resources on the table and said, These are the resources for the next 2 months. I've divided them into 4 portions. You can take them according to the instructions on the table. Young master. Everyone present was very surprised. Jiang Xiu was actually distributing resources to them. Jiang Xiu was currently in need of resources to break through to the next realm, but he was still distributing them to them? Young master, we're not in a hurry, Jiang Xiu said. Then do you think I'm lacking something like that? Everyone at the scene fell silent. Zhao Rong, every month from now on, you will distribute the resources to everyone according to this ratio. Jiang Xiu was a tyrant, but he was not stingy. As an earthling, he knew best that money could make the world go round. He had never been stingy to his followers. However, there were some things such as the sex cultivation methods that he would adhere to. This was the rule left behind by his master. Thank you, young master, Jiang Xiu said. From today onwards, I will be in seclusion for a period of time. During this time, I will not see anyone. Of course, I will not be at home. I will be going out. If he was in seclusion at home, the strength of these few servants would not be able to protect him at all. In order to avoid an accident like when he was in the Jiang family of the Jialan dynasty, he planned to go to a secret place. In the last growth path, he had developed many such places. At almost every stage, he had experienced life and death, and had such secret cultivation places. Moreover, they were all in the Tianqing school. The secret place in his heart was a place in the middle 3 peaks. If he went to the upper 3 peaks, he would definitely be discovered. He could only settle for the second best, and go to the middle 3 peaks. Late that night, the full moon hung high in the sky. Jiang Xiu directly flew out from the edge of the cliff and blended into the dark night. Last time was too short. Although Jiang Xiu had refined the karmic fire, he did not completely absorb the enormous heavenly fire precepts within. The great god sealing technique's secret method could allow him to surpass other god cultivation methods, but ultimately he could not grasp it in one go. He quietly went up a mountain peak and circled around to the back. It was night and very quiet. There were no traces of people at all except for the sound of some birds. After circling around the mountain range, he entered a canyon. The scene of him cultivating here in the past appeared in Jiang Xiu's mind. This time, his cultivation speed was more than 10 times faster than the last time. This was partly because he had changed to a god cultivation method, but more importantly, it was because of the past cultivation experiences in his mind. On Jiang Xiu's third divine mark diagram, a third stroke had appeared, and the outline of the fourth had already appeared. He was about to break through. If he broke through again, he would break through to become a lower divine god. It was not difficult to break through a small realm. As long as he had enough time, resources, and talent, he would definitely be able to break through. However, what followed next was to become a middle divine god. Jiang Xiu's eyesight and combat experience allowed him to ignore the gap between any small realms. However, if this gap were to expand to a large realm, then he would be somewhat helpless. No matter how good a baby's combat skills were, he would not be able to defeat a powerless woman. In the face of such a huge gap in strength, any combat skills would pale in comparison. Therefore, if Jiang Xiu wanted to win the intersect battle, there was a big prerequisite, and that was that he had to break through to become a middle divine god. There were many intersect combatants, and they were the most numerous in the Tianqing school. Thus, the ranking matches between them would last for a very long time. If Jiang Xiu made the best use of his time, he would still have a chance to become a middle divine god before the final seeding match. Soon, Jiang Xiu entered a state of cultivation and meditation. The flames that he had refined slowly appeared above his head. The flames flickered, illuminating the cave and emitting heat. The heavenly fire precept was a powerful precept, which was also the great way of heavenly fire. Although there were many differences between them, they generally led to the same destination. With the previous enlightenment, his cultivation this time was much faster. Not long after, the flames enveloped Jiang Xiu's entire body. It was as if his entire body was burning. Suddenly, Jiang Xiu felt that something was wrong. It was that strange divine light of destiny that was much brighter than before. Suddenly, an image appeared in his mind. He was cultivating in the cave when footsteps came from outside. The two people were originally talking outside. You were also involved in what happened back then. Now you're telling me this? The voice was a little familiar, but Jiang Xiu could not remember where. Moreover, the two auras were very powerful. They seemed to be immortal kings. Don't scare yourself. He died a long time ago. I saw it with my own eyes. Could it be his disciple? Are you stupid? Even if it was his disciple, where would he find such a talented one? That kid is only in his 20s. He was just born more than 30 years after Jiang Luoxia died. How could it be his disciple? This image flashed in his mind. Jiang Xiu was shocked. They're talking about me. Who said they saw me die with their own eyes? Jiang Xiu really wanted to see who the person who said they saw him die with their own eyes was. As long as he saw him, that person would be a great accomplice of the Ji Dao sect's plot to usurp the throne. He would be Jiang Xiu's great enemy. However, these were all the sudden flashes of the divine light of destiny. They were not here yet. In fact, they should be here soon. His lesser destiny technique could not see too far away. If Jiang Xiu stayed here, he would naturally be able to see the other party and see who the other party was. However, he himself would definitely fall into a situation where there was a slim chance of survival. The other party, regardless of whether he was Jiang Luoxia or not, could possibly kill him to silence him. With the ability of an immortal king, it was impossible for Jiang Xiu to hide at all. Hence he had to leave now. Otherwise, there would be no more chances. He did not hesitate. He rushed out of the cave at the first moment, and flew toward the forest in the distance. However, his heart was pounding. He tried hard to recall that person's voice. First of all, it was a man. Moreover, it had to be an immortal king. Since he appeared here, it meant that he was not in his own dojo. However, Jiang Xiu was not qualified to visit an immortal king now. Otherwise, it would be easy to find out who was in the sect and not in the dojo. Who is it? Who could it be? Jiang Xiu was burning with anger. He actually said that he saw him die with his own eyes. He really could not believe that someone in the sect would betray him like this. Jiang Xiu firmly remembered this voice. He did not know who it was in the past, but the next time he heard it, he felt that he was 70% to 80% sure that he would recognize it. Chapter 525. After escaping from that secret place, Jiang Xiu didn't give up on cultivating in seclusion. Instead, he became more anxious. He realized that he couldn't remember where he was, or what he was doing before Chung Lingsu used the Great Fate. In other words, part of his memory was missing. Of course, he had realized this problem before, but he ignored it. Now, he felt that this missing memory might play a vital role in helping him figure out why the position of the faction master had been taken by someone else. What happened to the missing memory? Although the Tianqing school wasn't the ruler of the spiritual state, only one or two factions were on par with it. Of the hundreds of dynasties in the spiritual state, half of them were subsidiaries of the Tianqing school, and most of the resources of the Tianqing school were tributes from these subordinate factions. One could imagine how respected the position of the faction master of the Tianqing school was. Even an emperor's daily life was recorded, let alone the faction master of the Tianqing school. In the past, Jiang Xiu's words and actions were recorded. That was more than 50 years ago, less than 60 years ago. If the Ji Daoist sect hadn't deliberately destroyed it, they should have been able to find some clues. But no matter what the reason was, the position of sect master had already been taken away. Even if Jiang Xiu found evidence to prove that the Ji Dao sect had conspired to take away his position, it was far from enough. If he wanted to take it back, there was a big prerequisite. He had to recover his cultivation base and return to his peak. Slowly, his thoughts returned to the state of cultivation. After entering the late stage of the lower heaven god realm, he had broken through the limits of his realm, and his soul could be strengthened again. The godly soul elixir was too slow, so he used the tipping soul elixir again. On the other hand, he used the karmic fire to comprehend the law of heavenly fire contained in it. Once again, he used it for both purposes. Fire had the Tao of speed, the Tao of slowness, the Tao of formlessness, and so on. The Tao of swiftness in the great Tao of heaven fire was the magical law of swiftness among god cultivators. Once one understood it, one's godhood would grow stronger, and one's understanding of the characteristics of fire would be complete. Most people would only be able to comprehend the great Tao slowly after reaching a higher realm. Those at a lower realm would not be able to comprehend it at all. However, Jiang Xiu was a freak. His comprehension of nomological laws was faster than his cultivation level. When an ordinary person cultivated a certain great Tao to the point where it was close to being complete, they would be almost at the upper celestial immortal realm. Above that would be the great celestial immortal realm. And the great celestial immortal realm was to fuse a certain great Tao into one and reach the great perfection realm. From then on, he would be the fire, and the fire would be him. Therefore, great celestial immortals were on another level. Above that would be the celestial king realm, who could discover the existence of energy even finer than fire. There was a huge difference between god cultivators and immortals, especially in the divine body. Jiang Xiu's current skeletal structure was completely different from that of immortals. Every time he advanced, he would evolve as a god cultivator. His body would undergo an obvious earth-shattering change. His outer appearance would not change, but there would be a lot more bones inside. This would allow his body to have greater possibilities and tolerance. The blood in his body surged once again, and his godhood erupted with intense light. His entire body emitted a colorful light. At this moment, Jiang Xiu realized that he might be about to break through. The peak of lower celestial immortal realm was right in front of him. Boom! The barrier in his body was broken, and his blood exploded. His entire body was like the Big Bang. Many parts of his body underwent another huge change. His godhood was clearly strengthened, and his soul was also strengthened. Peak of lower celestial immortal realm. Suddenly, Jiang Xiu's third divine rune pattern had another divine rune added. Just like the first divine rune, the Protoss talent would only appear when the divine rune pattern was completed. The first Protoss talent was the first sound of heaven and earth. The second Protoss talent was the world shroud. The third, from the previous development pattern, each talent was stronger than the previous one. Jiang Xiu was looking forward to what kind of Protoss talent would appear next. The world shroud was already heaven-defying. If the third Protoss talent was even more abnormal than the world shroud, then it would really be abnormal. He didn't know how long he had been in seclusion this time. Of course, he still had to continue. Only when he reached the middle level of Celestial Immortal would he have a chance to compete. But before that, he had to make a trip back. At least he would know the approximate time. He didn't want to miss the day of the inner sect battle. Young master. Shengguan Zhaorong was pleasantly surprised to see Jiang Xiu. You're out of seclusion? She couldn't tell if Jiang Xiu had a breakthrough, but it seemed like Jiang Xiu's appearance had changed once again. But it wasn't as big as the change from Earth God to Celestial God. This could only be considered a minor adjustment. Big brother Li went to watch the inner sect battle. Li Chong was a cultivator. Of course he wouldn't miss the inner sect battle. Not to mention the inner sect battle, even the outer sect battle was a once-in-a-lifetime battle in the Jialan dynasty. Watching the battle would give him a lot of benefits. Did anyone come in the past 2 days? Shengguan Zhaorong said. Oh right, Elder Lu came. He was the one who brought us here, Elder Lu Chongkong. I said that young master was in seclusion, so he left. Lu Chongkong. Jiang Xiu was secretly puzzled. When he heard the conversation between the two people on the middle 3 peaks, he thought that someone would come to find him, or an elder who was interested in him. The real power center of the Tianqing school didn't seem to pay too much attention to his appearance, nor did it cause any waves. Compared to the outer sect and inner sect, these people lived at the bottom of the Tianqing school, just like how an emperor would care so much about the people below. In the Tianqing school, the power struggle was more complicated than that of a dynasty. There were traditional families and new families. In the past, Jiang Xiu was able to climb up because he had paid the price of countless people's lives. Jiang Xiu wanted to investigate things, so he had to first return to the core circle and see the state of the people inside. Not to mention other things, he didn't know the recent situation of his disciples. They would never have thought that their master would come back, and even change his appearance. However, Jiang Xiu was also prepared for the worst in his heart. Those disciples of his were very likely to have already been killed. The possibility of this was very high. The Jidao sect was a rebellion, not a normal transfer. How could someone with a guilty conscience leave Jiang Xiu's disciples alive? Did he say anything? Shengguan Zhaorong said. Elder Lu said that what he said to you before still counts. Jiang Xiu thought about it. Lu Chongkong seemed to have told him that if he was in trouble, he could look for him. Could it be that he heard about the matter between him and Gu Qian, and wanted to help? The corner of his mouth raised in a strange expression. No one would take the initiative to say that they would help him. There was no living Lei Feng in the immortal martial continent. Even if Lu Chongkong really wanted to help Jiang Xiu, he would have to wait until Jiang Xiu came to beg him before he could help. Taking the initiative. Was it really because he cherished talent? Or was there another reason? Jiang Xiu thought in his heart. Even if he looked like Jiang Luoxia should be dead in their eyes. Not only that, he was a divine cultivator and a saber cultivator. No matter what, there was no reason to be associated with him. Oh right, how's the inner sect competition? The inner sect competition was based on points. In other words, if one wanted to challenge a true disciple, other than winning, they had to fight more battles. At the level of the inner sect, there were many immortal martial arts that countered each other. If one won a battle, they would gain 2 points, and if one lost, 1 point would be deducted. At that time, the one with the highest points would be able to challenge a true disciple. Jiang Xiu remembered that the cutoff was 70+ points. Of course this wasn't safe. The situation was different every time, just like the college entrance exam. The admission points were different every year. Young master wants to go. Let's go. At the location of the inner sect competition, Jiang Xiu's appearance caused quite a commotion. This person who had disappeared for more than 10 days finally reappeared. Jiang Xiu is coming out. He finally went down the stage. Countless pairs of eyes stared at him. All of them were inner sect disciples, and all of them had the qualifications to fight against Jiang Xiu. Who's going to be the vanguard? From afar, a group of people walked over. It was Gu Qian's group. Gu Qian's expression was gloomy. Jiang Xiu, you finally showed yourself. Jiang Xiu's eyes were indifferent. Right now, he only had the strength of a peak stage lesser heavenly deity. If even a mid-stage heavenly deity came to challenge him, he would definitely lose. Gu Qian would definitely send a mid-stage heavenly deity to fight against Jiang Xiu. At that time, Jiang Xiu would lose again and again, falling to the bottom. Go up the stage and play. Let's talk about it after we pass the inner sect. Chapter 526. Let me see. What qualifications do you have to challenge me? Gu Qian looked at Jiang Xiu mockingly. The inner sect members of the Gu family were enough to consign Jiang Xiu to eternal damnation. Jiang Xiu was very outstanding and monstrous, and everyone saw it. However, no matter how outstanding a person was, it was impossible to cross the chasm of a large realm. Of course, Gu Qian understood this. It was not difficult to find a dozen or 20 middle-level celestial immortals in the inner sect. Just the number of people could overwhelm Jiang Xiu. Brat, let's see how arrogant you can be. Some of his underlings beside him were very unhappy with Jiang Xiu. One of them flew towards the floating peak, and it seemed like he wanted to challenge Jiang Xiu. Junior brother Jiang, let's fight. But don't worry, there's no need to be afraid. I won't kill you. There are people waiting in line behind you. Looking around, there were more than 10 people gathered around Gu Qian. Jiang Xiu glanced around. They were all inner sect disciples, and they were all middle-level celestial immortals. Shengguan Zharong shrank behind Jiang Xiu in fear. Young master. Jiang Xiu did not move, and his gaze was indifferent. The long sword in that person's hand shook, and a sharp airflow burst out from his body. At the same time, the sword light became incomparably bright, and the airflow rendered the invisible supernatural power into a thick light, covering the flowing light on the sword. Elegy of the Swordsman. Jiang Xiu's expression was unusually cold. This sword technique was not passed down by the ancestors of Tianqing school, but a set of sword techniques that he comprehended when Jiang Luoxia fought his way out of the inner sect. Later, everyone agreed that this sword technique was very suitable for sword cultivators, and it was the foundation for the derivation of sword intent. Now someone was using the sword technique he created to fight against him. Come up. The bright light accompanied by the sword aura swept over. He was so anxious that before Jiang Xiu decided to go on stage, he directly attacked Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu's eyes flashed with a strong light, and it was as if two rays of sword aura tore through the sky. Break. The sound of a saber rang out from his body. Saber intent. His entire body is emanating saber intent. How is this possible? Releasing saber intent without drawing the saber was an extremely high level of saber cultivation. To achieve this, one had to fuse the saber intent with their body to achieve the so-called unity of the saber and man, forming an extremely powerful force. Intent achieved momentum, and the so-called momentum was actually an aura field. This was just like a person. There was a huge difference between a person's chi field and a person's chi field. It was the same for saber and sword cultivators. It was extremely difficult to comprehend this point. The chi field was the foundation of the domain. There were only a few people in the inner sect who could do this. Bang! The sword radiance collided with the saber intent. His opponent had the upper hand in terms of overall level, while Jiang Xiu had the upper hand in terms of sword cultivation. The two of them clashed, and light exploded like two missiles colliding. The sky rumbled and shook. Jiang Xiu, come up here if you have the guts, the other party clamored. As far as he was concerned, all of Jiang Xiu's skills and abilities paled in comparison to the advantage of a higher realm. Don't be in such a hurry to die. Jiang Xiu's gaze coldly swept across. Gu Qian, you're afraid, so you found a few random people to fight for you? True disciple. He was extremely disdainful. As a true disciple, he actually did not have the courage to face a new disciple. Ridiculous. Gu Qian's expression was cold as he looked straight at Jiang Xiu. This brat was not only vicious, but also sharp-tongued. Brat, there's no use in hiding. Do you think you can hide forever just because you can hide once? Even if you can't break out of the inner sect battle, I will still make you wish you were dead. I said before that if you don't listen, I will cut off your hand. You better think carefully. Left hand or right hand? Jiang Xiu ignored him and left with Shangguan Zhaorong. Senior Gu, are we just going to let him leave like this? Gu Qian said, don't worry. He's dead for sure. The intersect battle is about to end. If we touch him now, he will think that I'm afraid of him. Do you think he can suddenly become a middle immortal? He could ignore what the people below said, but the news had already spread among the true disciples. He did not want to lose face in his own circle. He has to come down and compete. But that person's gaze fell on the place where the sword light and blade intent collided. The sword light had already dissipated, but the blade intent still had some power left in the void. He secretly made up his mind that he must comprehend his own man and sword realm of sword intent. In fact, when he reached this step, he had spent many years, but he didn't even touch the surface. Of course, he had seen the sword intent domain displayed by the true disciples before. The power that cut through the void left a deep impression on him. But this was the first time he faced it himself, and the one who attacked was a person whose realm was lower than his. Sword intent that fused with sword chi. That was the true sword art. Why can't I comprehend it? He was very unhappy. He felt that the heavens were unfair. If the true disciples could comprehend it, then so be it. But that kid, what did he have? A saber cultivator and a sword cultivator were, of course, different. At the very least, the heaven and earth were completely different. However, there were also similarities. At a lower level, in a lightless world, they were very similar to each other to a certain extent. Therefore, Jiang Xiu did not spend too much time comprehending the saber will of the unity of man and saber, because he had cultivated it once before. Elder Lu. Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu was watching the battle inside. He wanted to show his face in front of the public, but he did not expect to meet Lu Changkong. Lu Changkong had come to look for him before. Logically speaking, even if Jiang Xiu did not need his help, he should still go and meet him. But his time was limited. He was going to go into seclusion after going around, but he did not expect to meet Lu Changkong here. But this was too much of a coincidence. I was going to visit the elder later. I didn't expect to meet you here. Lu Changkong looked at Jiang Xiu, and his eyes flashed with surprise. Others could not see through Jiang Xiu's realm, but Lu Changkong naturally saw through it at a glance. Compared to when he first went to Tianqing school, Jiang Xiu had advanced by 2 small realms. In less than 2 months, he had advanced by 2 small realms. Motherf ***, this is practically flying. One had to know that even Jiang Luoxia himself did not have such speed. You advanced? Jiang Xiu nodded slightly. Yes. Not bad at all. Lu Changkong was indeed shocked. Such speed was truly too shocking. It seems that the huge pressure isn't always a bad thing. This immortal has heard about your matter. Jiang Xiu said. Thank you for your concern. Lu Changkong smiled. Jiang Luoxia was like this in the past. The more you pressured him, the faster he advanced, and the stronger he bounced back. They were too similar. You remind me of someone? Jiang Xiu asked. Who? Lu Changkong stared at Jiang Xiu's face and said deeply. The former sect leader, Jiang Luoxia. Boom. Jiang Xiu's whole body trembled. He knew that Lu Changkong must have suspected something. Otherwise, he would not have taken the initiative to look for him. It was not a coincidence that they met here. Is it? Jiang Xiu's face flashed unnaturally. He clenched his fists. That's an honor. Sect leader Jiang is a role model for my generation. But I heard that he has fallen. Jiang Xiu was not an ordinary person. Under such a tense situation where his identity could be exposed at any time, not only did he not shrink back, he did not change the topic. Instead, he faced it directly and seemed very calm. Lu Changkong said, Yes, I heard that he has fallen. Heard? Jiang Xiu felt strange. Elder Lu, did you only hear it from others? Did you not see it with your own eyes? Lu Changkong said. Yes, when sect leader Jiang was in trouble, I was not there. Jiang Xiu really wanted to ask him. Who did you hear it from? But he knew that if he asked this question, it would be asking for trouble. So he did not answer. Some people he would say it himself out of habit. Jiang Xiu was right. Lu Changkong said. This matter is very complicated. Some say that it was an internal setup. Some say that he was killed by an outsider. But it seems more like a collusion. Jiang Xiu said. There are people in the sect who colluded with outsiders to frame their own sect leader. It can't be. It can't be? Lu Changkong's eyes darkened. He seemed to be very dissatisfied with Jiang Xiu's words because he lowered his head and avoided Jiang Xiu's gaze. Jiang Xiu could not see his expression clearly. Lu Changkong's voice sounded in his ears again. You are too young and do not know the complexity of the world. The power struggle in Tianqing school is much more complicated than that in the imperial court. Just like how sect leader Ji married a disciple of the Taihua sect. The impact is much greater than the marriage between the imperial court and the imperial court. Jiang Xiu was stunned. Sect leader Ji married a disciple of the Taihua sect? Just as he was in a daze, Lu Changkong's eyes inadvertently swept across Jiang Xiu's face. Chapter 527. Lu Changkong took in the surprise and shock on Jiang Xiu's face. He pondered for a moment. Jiang Xiu's expression did not match his status. It seems like you haven't heard of it. Jiang Xiu shook his head. The higher-ups of the sect are far beyond the reach of inner disciples like me. The reason why he was stunned was mostly because of anger. Taihua sect and Tianqing school were on the same level as each other. The relationship between the two sects was not harmonious. Although they were not mortal enemies, there was still friction from time to time. Especially when Jiang Luoxia was in power, the relationship between him and Taihua sect was the most tense. Jiang Xiu had fought with Taihua sect's leader several times. They regarded each other as the greatest enemy of their lives. However, as the leader of Jidao sect, he married a disciple of Taihua sect. Putting aside the relationship between the two sects, Jiang Xiu's seniority was lower than Taihua sect's. As the leader of Tianqing school, he became Jiang Xiu's junior. Therefore, the entire Tianqing school was inferior to Taihua sect. How could Jiang Xiu tolerate such humiliation? That's true. It was normal for Jiang Xiu to not know about it. After all, it was a matter of the higher-ups. However, Jiang Xiu's shock and anger were not normal. This was not how he should behave. Let's find a place to sit down and have a cup of spiritual tea? Lu Changkong surprisingly sent out an invitation. An elder inviting an ordinary disciple for tea was something that had never happened before. Unless the disciple had flirted with the elder's daughter and made the elder's daughter want to die, the elder would only invite him for tea if he had no choice. However, Lu Changkong did not have a daughter. Jiang Xiu did not flirt with the elder's daughter. This was a bit strange. Jiang Xiu had a feeling that Lu Changkong's suspicion towards him had deepened. Perhaps he had accidentally fallen into Lu Changkong's trap during the conversation just now, which made Lu Changkong even more suspicious. Inviting him for tea might reveal some information about Jiang Luoxia, but it would also increase the risk of him being exposed. Jiang Xiu wasn't familiar with Lu Changkong, so he didn't know where he stood. If he was the Jidao sect's lackey, then wouldn't he be delivering himself to their doorstep? I'm sorry, Elder Lu. The inner sect battles are intense, and I need to make the best use of my time to cultivate. I think you should understand my current situation. Jiang Xiu refused. A look of surprise flashed across Lu Changkong's face. He smiled and said, You can't really be thinking that you can make a breakthrough to become a middle heavenly god in just a month's time. Without becoming a middle heavenly deity, there was no way to break through from the inner court. Jiang Xiu said, How do you know if you don't try? What if you succeed? Success? Lu Changkong admired Jiang Xiu's confident aura. It was as if no problem could stop him. Even in the face of such a big predicament, he was still calm and collected. Fine. Even if you succeed, become a middle heavenly god, and win the inner sect battles, so what? You have to face Gu Qian, a true disciple. Fine. Even if you win against Gu Qian, there is still Gu Deqian behind him. Even if you win against Gu Deqian, there is still the Jidao sect behind him. Don't tell me you want to become enemies with the entire Tianqing school? Let's go have some tea. Maybe we'll find a solution. Lu Changkong might really be able to help Jiang Xiu. After all, the conflict between children was nothing in the eyes of adults. However, Jiang Xiu felt that Lu Changkong was too proactive. His initiative was too abnormal. No matter what, I must stand in front of Gu Qian. I must make him pay the price for bullying me. That's right. I, Jiang Xiu, only have one life, But Gu Deqian also only has one son. Lu Chongkong was shocked. His gaze fell on Jiang Xiu's face and couldn't move away. The person in front of him was just a small inner disciple, but at this moment, he felt a trace of fear. Sorry. Jiang Xiu walked past him. Shangguan Zhaorong followed behind him. She didn't dare to make a sound. She stared at Jiang Xiu's back, and was a little absent-minded. She had never seen a boy like Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu looked at the rankings of the major venues, and roughly estimated that there should be 1.5 months left. In other words, he must reach the middle immortal level in 1.5 months. Young master, Jiang Xiu said. What is it? Shangguan Zhaorong said. Didn't young master say that you want to take Zhaorong to do a physique test? Why do you suddenly want to do it? Shangguan Zhaorong said. I want to cultivate. Jiang Xiu stopped in his tracks. He remembered that he said that he wouldn't support Shangguan Zhaorong to cultivate. Although they were given resources, those resources could all be exchanged for money. Why? Shangguan Zhaorong said seriously. I want to protect young master. Ha ha ha. Jiang Xiu raised his head and laughed. What a joke, what a joke. The dignified Tianqing school's sect master needed a servant girl to protect him. He knew that Shangguan Zhaorong's intentions were good, but to pity a strong person, that was the greatest insult to him. You think you can protect me? Shangguan Zhaorong said. Yes, even if Zhaorong does a physique test, her talent should be far from young master's. Young master is the stars in the sky, Zhaorong is just the mud on the ground, but it's always good to have a bit of cultivation, even if I have the chance to block a sword for young master in the future. Jiang Xiu stopped laughing and looked at the serious look on Shangguan Zhaorong's beautiful face, especially the determination in her black and shiny eyes. He didn't doubt that Shangguan Zhaorong was sincere at this moment. Perhaps he touched one of her emotions and moved her, but people change. How many people changed from a blank sheet of paper to darkness? Moreover, the more soft-hearted a person was, once they became ruthless, they would be darker than anything else. He would rather Shangguan Zhaorong be an ordinary servant girl. He didn't need her to do anything for him. As long as she took care of his daily life, that was enough. Good. But Jiang Xiu didn't refuse, because Jiang Xiu knew that he couldn't stop it. He also didn't want to control Shangguan Zhaorong's fate. It's behind that door. Jiang Xiu brought him to a place in the lower 3 peaks. Here one could test one's talent and physique. Many disciples from big clans outside of the Sky Motion sect would come here to take the test. They only needed to spend a little money to do so. You can go in. Shangguan Zhaorong nervously asked. Young master won't accompany me in. Jiang Xiu shook his head and said, it's only a test of talent. After you go in, give her some spirit stones and the person inside will help you test. But remember, don't tell her your name or where you're from. Yes. Then young master, what about you? Everything here was the same as before, with an antique atmosphere. It should be autumn soon, and because of the location, the leaves had already turned yellow. When the wind blew, the ground was covered in fallen leaves. Jiang Xiu stepped on the bluestone bricks, the fallen leaves rolling around his feet. I'll wait for you outside. In the past, Shizuan had also accompanied him like this, floating for more than 3,000 years, like a sinner, like a bubble, like a flash of lightning, like an old tree in front of the courtyard. 1,000-year-old Xiao Xiao. 10,000-year-old Xiao Xiao. Come true, go time and space, it should be as it is. After a long time, the sound of footsteps came from behind him. Young master. Jiang Xiu turned around and saw Shangguan Zhaorong's face. He knew in his heart that it should be a special physique, otherwise she wouldn't be happy. But in the past, when Shizuan turned around, what he saw was a dejected Jiang Xiu. But in the end he didn't disappoint him, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously rose into a smile. Before he could speak, Shangguan Zhaorong smiled and said, Young master, so you know how to smile. You look really good when you smile. Jiang Xiu immediately retracted his smile and asked, How was the test? Shangguan Zhaorong said, The person who tested me said that I had a special physique, but he said that he didn't know what kind of special physique it was. It should be very ancient, and he wanted to check some ancient books. He told me to wait at the door for a while. In the immortal martial continent, There was a saying that the more ancient a special physique was, the more heaven-defying it was. If it was so ancient that even the person who tested it had to look through ancient books, then it must be very ancient. No wonder Shangguan Zhaorong was so happy. But soon after, the sound of footsteps came from inside. It was a middle-aged man. Jiang Xiu asked, "Was he the one who tested me?" Yes. Shangguan Zhaorong wanted to ask him what kind of special physique she had, and whether or not he found it. But from behind, a sharp blade flashed, and the person in front of her stopped in his tracks, and then fell into a pool of blood. "Young master, why did you kill him?" Jiang Xiu said. "He was lying to you. If he didn't know what kind of special physique you had, how would he know that you had a special physique?" That you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.